All right, it is election night in America. This is our coverage, the Hill's Decision Desk 2026 Data Nerds. As you saw there, I'm not the only one. Joined with me for the next few hours or so, in and out. Chris Steyerwalt, my brother, you out there on the internet? They fed us pizza. I'm happy.
We didn't get no pizza over here. I don't know what's going on back at the headquarters, but there ain't no pizza here.
Julia Manchester, pizza or salad? Sandwiches?
There's sandwiches, pizza, salad. They feed us well here at the headquarters. Chris, you're missing out.
All right.
That's fine.
All right. So it's 7:30 if you're watching us here on the East Coast. More importantly, guys, 7:30 across the great state of North Carolina as the polls are closing there. There are races across the country tonight in North Carolina, in Texas, Arkansas as well, but we'll be focusing on North Carolina and Texas tonight as there are possibly some races that could make us scratch our head. I don't know, make us talk tomorrow for sure. Chris, let's start with what's going on in North Carolina tonight. You got a big Senate matchup to come there involving two very high-profile individuals who, if they get through the primary tonight, as it is expected to be, with Michael Whatley and Roy Cooper as the polls close there in the Tar Heel State.
So in January, for the first time, I believe ever or since Reconstruction, there are more registered Republicans in North Carolina than there are registered Democrats. Now, we could tell the story in North Carolina that is true in most of the country and for the country as a whole, which is the number of unaffiliated voters continues to go up. It's just taking more from Democrats than it is from Republicans. And the Republican margin here is, I'm just looking at the numbers from the state elections office, and it's, 15,000 more Republican registered voters, 2.31 million to 2.32 million.
Right.
I bring that up because the Democrats and the Republicans in North Carolina both have, they did a redistricting. I don't know whether you heard, but redistricting is pretty popular this year.
It's a thing.
And it'll probably get thrown out in court and all that other stuff. But the Republicans and Democrats each have a contested House district where their primary is going to be hot. Republicans in the redrawn first, which is now drawn to be more Republican. Democrats in the fourth, which is around Durham. I tell you all that only to say this. The parties are pretty evenly matched. One thing I want to see tonight is who's more fired up, right? Because
I'll put myself on.
They're both vote races, right? Both of the Senate nominating, the front runners have cleared. They're both going through. So one thing we'll get to learn tonight is who's got more vim and vigor, and I'm interested to see that.
Julia, what are you looking for?
Yeah, so I haven't covered North Carolina as much, so I can't speak to that state. But tonight, I think we're really looking at Texas, and a few other things. We mentioned redistricting being a thing this year. Well, a lot of it started in Texas when the state's Republicans last year and Governor Greg Abbott really pushed those maps through. So there's a lot of primaries, including some member-on-member primaries, I believe, happening throughout the state. In terms of the House races, you and I, Blake, before we kicked off the program, we're talking about Tony Gonzalez, the embattled congressman who's, been accused of having an extramarital affair with a woman who later ended up taking her own life. So a very sad story there.
You even have Republicans coming out saying he should resign.
Absolutely. So he is certainly embattled. Notably, President Trump was in Texas last Friday, and Tony Gonzalez was among the Republicans who was in the audience at that rally. So seemingly has the back of the president as of now. But also you have, I think, probably the biggest story in Texas tonight is the Senate primary. And at stake in the primary is incumbent Republican Senator John Cornyn's seat. John Cornyn is a major leader in the Senate. He is an institution of sorts in the Senate. He's been in the Senate, I believe, close to 20 years, if not over 20 years. And he is being primaried by the state's Attorney General Ken Paxton and Congressman Wesley Hunt. Now, he and Paxton, Cornyn and Paxton, have long had, very prickly relationship, a feud. But this primary, specifically the dynamic between Cornyn and Paxton, has really turned into a MAGA versus, I guess you could say, somewhat establishment dynamic within the Republican Party in Texas. If you go back to 2021, Cornyn lost a lot of support from the Republican grassroots after he worked with Democrats across the aisle to in the Biden administration to pass that gun safety legislation in the wake of the Uvalde school shootings, and we know that he and President Trump have had a bit of a touch and go relationship. So I think that's the biggest story out of Texas tonight.
Steyerwalt, in Texas, you've got the Democratic side of the aisle, you've got the Republican side of the aisle, and by the way, you guys know how many races there are in Texas tonight? I would have gotten this totally wrong. You want to take a guess?
Oh gosh,
I wouldn't have been in the ballpark.
It would have to be hundreds.
I think hundreds.
3,266, according to our friends at Decision Desk HQ, though there are 15 featured races in the Longhorn State tonight. By the way, I should be noting DDHQ, we have a look at their dashboard as the votes come in. They're the best in the business. Hear, hear. Everyone agrees? Hear, hear. And so we'll be able to poke around and sort of get their numbers as they come in and follow this. But so of the 3,266 races, Chris, 15 featured. Let's break this down. Julia just went through it. Let's start on the Democratic side of the aisle. You've got Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman, well known on the political cable news world. And then you have James Talarico, who probably nobody knew about in the political world for the most part until he showed up on Joe Rogan's podcast. And Joe Rogan said, you know what, maybe you sound like a future president of the United States. And hey-oh, there it goes. And Basil, can we pull up sort of, can we pull up maybe some of the...
Yeah, what are you looking
for?
The
polling or the prediction markets, either or. The polling's been heading slightly Talarico's way, Chris.
Well, we should point out there's been basically no useful polling until the very, very end. So there was some hot garbage polling from YouGov for the University of Texas, and it was useless. And I shake my fist at the lack of decent polling in the race. And then at the end, our partners at Emerson College and a couple of others dropped useful, methodologically sound polls. And what they reflect was a big late surge for Talarico. The way I think about Texas Democratic politics is this. Jasmine Crockett is one of 4 members of the Congressional Black Caucus who represent Texas. And it's basically Dallas and Houston. There's Fort Worth, Dallas, but Dallas and Houston metro areas. We can think of Sheila Jackson Lee. Well, Al Green is still there.
Yep.
And the way that they have succeeded in Texas politics is by voting as a compact minority. They all stick together. They don't all stick together, but Jasmine Crockett getting in the Emerson poll better than 80% of Black voters support in this race. And that was a good starting place for her. What has happened, or what the polling reflects has happened, is that Talarico was doing well with white voters, right? And so here we're looking over at Austin, and here we're looking at San Antonio, and here we're looking at Dallas suburbs, places where the Democrats aren't heavily saturated. But he was doing well with white Democrats. And then he seemed to, and this is what we're going to find out tonight, seemed to break through with Hispanic voters. So something like a third of primary voters today for the Democrats are going to be Hispanic voters. If Talarico can build a coalition with 60-70% of both white and Hispanic voters, not even a compact demographic group like Jasmine Crockett's base of support will be enough.
Then on the other side of the aisle, Chris, you have the Republican primary, obviously, and that is another interesting one because you've got a sitting Republican senator in the state of Texas, to which you would say, layup, okay, why are we even talking about it? Next, But no, because you've got the Attorney General there, Ken Paxton, and a sitting Congressman, Wesley Hunt. Donald Trump has not endorsed in this race. The polling there is
Not yet.
tight.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
And look, I think one of the if you're Ken Paxton, who the National Republican Senatorial Committee, basically every Republican political professional. I mean, for goodness sakes, Donald Trump's campaign guru from 24, Chris LaCivita, is working for John Cornyn. The assumption among political professionals, almost unanimously, would be that Ken Paxton is a bad general election candidate in a tough year for Republicans. He's got loads of personal scandal. He's got a bunch of out there policies. He has been, he might remind you of Roy Moore, who ran for the Attorney General of Alabama, former judge who ran for Senate down there and lost to Doug Jones way back when. Paxton is a plutonium kind of candidate. There are a lot of people in the base that support him, but he has real general election problems, especially if Talarico comes through on the Democratic side. So they've been torching him, right, including with money from a branch of the Republican Party. Been going after Paxton. Go ahead.
Hi, Anna Koyman. I saw Anna Koyman dancing there. She just got popped up. Anna,
that's how good my analysis is.
That's how good your analysis is. We just bring Anna up. Anna, hold on.
Exactly.
Anna's live for us in the Carolinas. You got
Hello.
me, Anna? Hello.
Yes, I do. How you doing? Thanks for having me, Blake.
It's great. And friends. Julia Manchester here, Chris Steyerwalt as well. Anna, give me 1 second. I'm going to come out to you in Carolina in a second. I want to just, before we wrap up Texas real quick, because there's Texas too, which is Dan Krenshaw, and that's an interesting one, talking about Trump and endorsements and all that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I haven't been following that race in particular, so I can't really speak to that. But are we just the power of Trump's endorsement is obviously, I think, huge. And has he endorsed in that race? I haven't.
I don't, Chris. I don't think Crenshaw sought it out, right?
He has not. Ted Cruz has endorsed his challenger.
Yeah.
And it's gotten very ugly down there.
That's one way to put it in Texas. All right, back out to Anna. I'm sorry, Anna Koyman. Hello,
Hi.
she's
That's all right.
Anna Koyman is live in where are you tonight? Are you in Charlotte?
Yep, I'm at the Noble Smoke. I'm at the Watley Watch Party here.
So
Charlotte.
Michael Watley. Anna made the long drive from her house to the Watley.
Yes, and right at dinner time, it smells so great here. I know Chris Steyerwalt has his newsletter, The Whole Hog, so he'd really be enjoying this place.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'll let you know about and kind of set the stage of where I am in just a second. But my producer just got word from the Board of Elections here in North Carolina. The polls are going to be staying open until 8:30 in Halifax County. So the polls were set to close at 7:30 here in North Carolina at all polling places. If anybody was in line at 7:30, it wasn't that they were going to get turned away, but polls were closing at 7:30. But Halifax County, at two different polling places, they had issues with some laptop malfunctions. And at one of the polling places, no votes had any issues at all. But at the other polling place, the Board of Elections is reporting that there were 10 people who weren't able to cast their ballots at that time. So they decided to extend that county for an extra hour. So we don't expect votes and results and everything to start coming in, all the tallies and everything, till at least 8:30 tonight. So just a little bit of an update there. Also, I spent the day at a polling place in downtown Charlotte, and folks really seem energized on both sides of the aisle about what's happening with Iran and Operation Epic Fury. You've got some people thinking that the president has flouted the Constitution and that he should have gone to Congress. So you've got Democrats who feel really energized by that, and they're just, it's very often, even though it is a primary, you think about the very top of the ticket. So and since Trump is so divisive, you've got Democrats saying that, and then Republicans are saying, look, the Ayatollah needed to go, and Republicans are going to keep us safe. So that's been the initial part of my day today.
And when you're in North Carolina, obviously there's several military posts there throughout the state. And of course the backdrop of what's happening overseas. The race there obviously is expected to be Roy Cooper, who was the very popular Democratic governor on his side of the aisle,
Yep.
on the Democratic side, and then Michael Whatley, who was the chairman of the Republican National Committee, who
That's
is
right.
very close to Donald Trump. So these are two well-known sort of national figures in politics. And you bring up the backdrop of Iran. Is that playing out? Like, are you seeing that on the airwaves there politically? How's that playing out, if at all, or is it just strictly too early since this happened 4 days ago?
Well, look, I think we've seen even the national polling. A lot of people haven't made up their minds on how they feel about all of it yet. And you're right, with 40,000 troops in the region that are wearing American flags on their chest. It's just got to make you think. If you have a loved one who is there or might have to be deployed, so certainly, without a doubt, it's on the minds of North Carolina voters on both sides of the aisle, without a doubt. But yeah, so as you mentioned, the former RNC chair, Michael Whatley, and this is his watch party here, win, Whatley, win, win, Whatley, win, the red, white, blue side here too. He's sort of a shoo-in for the Republican Party to get the nod for to be the nominee come November. And as you say, former North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper as well on the Democratic side. So both of them kind of made their final push to voters in the last 24 hours. Roy Cooper went on X and said, North Carolinians, it's primary day, time to get out to the polls. He was promising on X that he's going to act as an independent, that he's going to push politics and party aside and vote for what North Carolina wants should he get chosen in November. And Michael Whatley made promises about how he's going to get wages up and he's going to get costs down and he's going to keep North Carolinians safe. So that's one big race that folks are watching on a national level here in the Tar Heel State. But also the 4th congressional district, which does include Durham. There is a Democrat race on that side that folks are watching. So there's an incumbent. Her name is Valerie Couchy, and it's essentially going to be a rematch between her and a county commissioner, Nita Alam. I believe, I don't have my notes in front of me. But the two of them are having a rematch, and Alam is to the left. She's got the endorsement of Bernie Sanders. She's seen as quite a bit more progressive. So folks are watching this race in particular to see just what the Democrats are going to be doing in November. What direction is the political party going to be heading? Are they going to be continuing to go more progressive as we've seen in the last couple of years?
Anna Koyman with us in North Carolina. Anna, it is always so nice to see you. Thanks for hanging with us here. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you.
Of course.
Good luck tonight.
Thank you. All right, I'm told Ian Swanson's with us. He's the editor-in-chief of The Hill. Ian, you out there in cyberspace?
Probably. It's great to be here.
I hear Ian. That's means I'm batting 500 here. I'll take it. There he is. In the friendly confines of the Swanson household. Let's pick up where Anna just was, and Julia as well. But Ian, I'll start with you. He's the boss.
He's my boss.
He's your boss. Yeah. It was interesting because we saw Donald Trump down there not too long ago in North Carolina, standing next to Michael Whatley. Obviously, tonight's primary night. It's Republicans on Republicans and Democrats on Democrats. But how I don't want to say is he in trouble there, but how within striking distance are Democrats there in that seat?
I think I think Republicans have reason to worry. Now, Democrats have only won they haven't won a lot of statewide Senate races in North Carolina in recent years, but just given the direction of where things are headed in terms of the polls with President Trump, Democrats in North Carolina are really optimistic. I tell you, Blake, we're still early, but I've got a friend who's in Democratic politics in North Carolina who's like my most pessimistic Democratic friend. He always thinks the sky is falling. He always thinks things are going very badly for his party. He was in, a very foul mood for most of 2024. And I saw him recently, and he was practically already measuring the curtains for Senator Cooper. So that's really just, an anecdotal story, but it resonated with me because here's this guy that I do respect and is right about a lot of things and is generally, kind of a doomsayer for his party, but is feeling really good in this case. And I think that's probably illustrative of a lot of Democrats about North Carolina right now. But, it's March. It's not November.
I think also another thing playing into Democrats in North Carolina into their favor is the population shift, especially when you look to the metropolitan areas like Charlotte, where Anna just was, or Raleigh-Durham. You have had, I think a population boom, particularly of younger people moving to these cities, and I think Democrats really see an opportunity there. The big question is, though, can Democrats turn out that urban base, but also try to maybe persuade enough or chip off enough rural voters to really make a big difference. Someone like Roy Cooper, and that's why I think Democrats are enthusiastic about Roy Cooper, is he's already had that winning formula. He's won statewide as a governor in North Carolina. So yeah, it's still early, but I think Democrats certainly have reason to be optimistic.
Do we have a shot of Ken Paxton site, Basil?
Yes,
Can you pull
I'm
it up
gonna
real
try
quick?
and pull that up right now. Let's see.
And here's why I bring it up. By the way, small market, but in the prediction markets, it's 79% Democratic Party. Speaking to Ian's optimism. Here's why I'm bringing this up, or Ian's friend's optimism. There's reporting right now coming in from our Alex Capriello, and we're going to have Alex live here in about 10 minutes, that a man was arrested outside of Ken Paxton's election party for having no license plate. He allegedly tried to get to the party floor. Dallas PD searched the car and found a bunch of suspicious items, and that individual was arrested. So there was a scene at the Paxton event, and so we'll be hearing from Alex Cap there momentarily. Chris, as it relates to North Carolina, I know we're ping-ponging back and forth between states here. But what are you? I know you said you're watching for enthusiasm tonight, but sort of the lay of the land from the 30,000-foot level there, given President Trump is just there.
Before you do that, do you see the news out of Dallas County? A judge in Dallas County. So the Texas Republicans broke the primaries apart into a Republican and a Democrat. Instead of running one primary, there are two separate primaries. And in Dallas, there were a lot of complaints from Jasmine Crockett's campaign that her voters, those same compact, urban, predominantly African-American voters that I was talking about make up the core for support, that her voters were being unfairly disenfranchised because when they went to go to their regular polling places, they found that had changed. And so a judge in Dallas County has just ordered that for Democrats only, that the polls in in that part of Texas will stay open until 9 p.m.
Eastern or local?
Time. Local time. So this is, look, if the race is close in Texas on the Democratic side, now there's a marginal candidate, there's a third candidate who seems like a gadfly, basically a perennial candidate. If the race is close enough that it goes to a runoff, it would have to be very, very close because this guy's going to get a point or a point and a half or whatever. But if the race is close enough that this becomes material, this could be a dramatic moment, because if that's how close the race was, and that's what Crockett's campaign is betting, is that this race is close enough that if they can just get a couple thousand more votes in Dallas, get more, drag them to the polls, do everything that you can to get them to the polls that would make the difference. That's how the Crockett campaign is approaching this. And if she loses by not a huge margin, I highly doubt that Jasmine Crockett is going to say, well, we gave it our best shot, don't worry about it. I don't think she's likely to accept a close result that she loses given these circumstances.
Can we pull up the map in Texas, Basil, and that way I can just sort of show the audience here as Chris talks counties and we go county by county, because I'm looking at, and if you can hover over Dallas, that'd be great, because I'm looking at, if you can just go to the remaining vote total. It looks like there were early vote total was somewhere around like 270,000. Does that sound right to you, Chris?
Yeah. And remember, for Crockett, she is counting on winning Election Day bigly. The assumption based on all of the polls that we had before and everything that we know is that Talarico was scoring with the higher propensity voters, the folks who would have gotten their mail-in ballots in, who would have done that stuff already. So he was winning 60-40 or something in polls of people who have already voted. And she was winning 51 whatever in the people who were planning to vote on Election Day. So her path to victory, strategy for victory, is about massive turnout in Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, predominantly today. So that's why this is so important.
I mean, so are we looking at Dallas County in particular, or just going map through? I mean, look, I sort of have been covering this race lately, not as much from the campaign perspective, but from more of a White House perspective and how the White House is looking at this race. I think President Trump, so far, obviously, he hasn't endorsed here. But look, I think we're going to glean a lot from these primaries. It seems that, Paxton has an advantage here because the grassroots seems to be behind him, the very red grassroots in Texas. But the question, I think, is, and I think we mentioned this before, does this race go to a runoff? And that's a very real possibility. Republicans in Texas I've talked to have said, predicted that if it were to go to a runoff with Paxton and Cornyn, that a runoff on an, would benefit more of a grassroots candidate like Ken Paxton over someone like John Cornyn. So we'll see what happens there.
Hey, Ian, your thoughts?
Honestly, Blake, my thoughts are that I don't feel comfortable making a lot of guesses, particularly with the Democratic primary in Texas. I talked to our friends at DDHQ not too long ago, and I know it's no fun to not make guesses, but this one is close. I agree with what Chris said. If I'm the Jasmine Crockett campaign, I am ready to fight like hell if I lose in a close race. There were some signs earlier today, and I think you guys discussed it, that, maybe there was some late shifts toward Talarico, that maybe even the population coming to the polls tonight was a Talarico, leaning electorate. But let's just count the votes and see what happens. I feel comfortable predicting that Cornyn Paxton is going to go to a runoff, but honestly,
are you trying to talk me out of a job here? Is this because I turned in my copy late on Monday? Is that what do you? This is my whole gig, Ian. I don't understand.
Well, your gig is analysis and beautiful analysis.
Speaking of turning in copy, I think Julia has some homework to do. Can we excuse her, editor-in-chief?
Yes, of course.
All right. Thank you, Miss Manchester.
Everyone.
Appreciate you. I want to go out to Alex Capriello, who is at the Ken Paxton watch party there. Alex Cap, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hey, Blake.
What on earth happened out there?
Yeah, some pretty interesting developments out of nowhere, it seemed. We were all essentially inside this watch party before the crowd really started to arrive. Just by happenstance, our field producer and our photographer just went downstairs to grab a bite to eat, which is when they saw the red and blue flashing lights. They saw a heavy police presence. And essentially, we're still awaiting the final word from the Dallas Police Department about what exactly happened. I called them right away, of course, to try to figure out, what the story is, who the guy is. But essentially, from eyewitness reports, it's a guy who showed up outside of this hotel. He was claiming to be a DoorDash driver trying to make a delivery either to the Paxton event or to somewhere inside this hotel. The only problem was he was dressed fully in camouflage. He had a camouflage bucket hat. He had a camouflage mask, wearing dark clothing with sunglasses. He wouldn't reveal his name to the police officers that were asking him questions. And then essentially when the police officers called their supervisors in and they were able to detain and make an arrest, that's when they started to go through his car and they found essentially an arsenal of ammunition. We did not see any sort of weapon, but it looked like boxes filled with gun ammo, as well as from the pictures I've seen, fully loaded magazines. They eventually stripped the mask and the hat off of him and the sunglasses. So I got a good look at what the guy looks like. He looks like he's in his early 20s. He looked like a white male. Still don't have an ID on the guy. Still don't have an official account from Dallas PD. But that just all unfolded within the past, 30 minutes or so, with his car eventually being towed away after he was arrested.
Hey, Alex. So as it happens, and I don't know if Ian Swanson's out there, but Ian, thank you for joining us. Aaron McGuire, who you know, great Republican strategist, joins us. And Alex, hang with me, because Aaron just sat down in the chair and said to me, and I'll let Aaron reveal the details, she knows someone in the crowd at that event. What do you know? By the way, hello.
Hi.
Everyone's safe.
Yes, everyone is
we
safe.
were supposed to talk and are going to talk a lot of politics, but what can you tell me about this?
Yeah, everyone is safe, thankfully, thank God. An individual entered where the event is this evening, and from my understanding, looked suspicious, was spotted by a team member at the event, flagged to the security team, and they removed the individual, and then police stepped in at that point and searched the man and his vehicle. And so it seems that individual was out to possibly cause harm this evening. I don't want to get ahead of the police. I don't want to get ahead of trying to break news on this. My husband is at that event. I'm very, very, very thankful that everyone is safe.
Yeah, same here. I can hear it in your voice. Alex, did you say that there was a weapon or no? Or they just didn't see one?
I did not see a weapon. I didn't see a weapon get pulled out. What I did see was a lot of ammunition, boxes of ammunition, and at least 2 or 3 fully loaded magazines. It looked like that was placed on the top of the vehicle.
Wow. What's the scene there now?
So people are starting to trickle into the Ken Paxton party. Obviously, you see the podium right there behind me. Right now, it's just, people and supporters that are grabbing a cocktail, chatting it up, waiting for, the first early votes and the results to start coming in. Obviously, we know that for most of the state, that's going to be happening any moment, or at least our folks at DDHQ are beginning to process that data. I heard you talking about, before you introduced me, the news, which is the extension of voting hours for Dallas County Democrats. Obviously, that was a huge concern when I spoke to Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett earlier today. Obviously, Dallas is her home. She knows that she is very likely going to pull a massive amount of votes, especially election day votes. And I was at one of the polling locations earlier today, and I saw exactly what the problem was. There was probably more people getting turned away from the polling location than they were allowed to actually enter. Okay, so, and the problem is...
Hey, Alex, let me jump in, because what you're seeing on your screen, and this is what we're going to be doing here for the next couple hours, is... we're seeing the first results trickle in the state of Texas, as it's 8 o'clock on the East Coast, 7 o'clock across the Lone Star State tonight. And the first results, as we have highlighted here, coming in from Dallas County this evening. But as we were just talking about, there's going to be some issues there.
Yeah, so I don't know if you want me to pick up where I was, but essentially, there's a lot of people out here in Dallas County and also Williamson County, which is, just north of Austin, Texas, that have their traditional polling locations. Think about your local library or your church. And for all of their life, they've gone to that specific polling location, only for today, this primary day, to learn that that's not actually a place where they could go. They have a specific precinct. And, that poses a problem for some people that maybe were only carving out 5-10 minutes of their lunch break, or people who don't have a vehicle and this is their closest polling location, or people that are waiting until the last minute. This is the reason why that they extended that deadline. Say they were waiting until the last minute just to find out when they got in line that this is not a place where they could vote. So this is the reason why Democrats like Jasmine Crockett are having issues with this, because she sees a lot of these voters that would be campaigning for her and would be pushing her name on the Scantron that all of a sudden are being turned away. And so, they made the decision after formally putting that request in to have an extension. And that's what we're seeing here in Dallas County.
Alex Kapp, glad you're safe out there. Thank you for the reporting tonight. Stay with us, over the course of the evening as it warrants. Can we pick up, Basil, as I mentioned, we're getting the first results across the state of Texas tonight. Aaron McGuire, who knows Texas politics in and out. Chris Steyerwalt here with me. I'm Blake Berman. I thank you for being with us here on our coverage on Hill Decision Desk 2026 data nerds. They call some of us. Chris, what are you looking for as these numbers start to roll in? First, call it 200,000 votes.
So, I mean, obviously, we can't know too much from
super duper early.
It's, where the vote is coming in is, where basically the closer you are to a city, the better you can expect Cornyn to do. Cornyn will do well in the suburbs. He will do well in those more affluent, college-educated neighborhoods in and around the cities in Dallas. And then Paxton should do well in rural areas and small towns. Texas is a huge state. But basically on the line tonight, if you're Ken Paxton, you really need to ring the bell. I don't rule out the possibility that it's very remote, but it is possible he could get to 50.1% and avoid the runoff, right? There have been polls that have shown that. I think it's unlikely, but it is possible. But if you're Paxton, what you need is to be far enough ahead of John Cornyn. You want to be 10 points ahead of John Cornyn so that you can get Donald Trump in the race. Because in this runoff, and this is the thing, and this is the reason that Republicans are so anxious about Paxton. He's already a badly damaged candidate. If he goes into a runoff with Cornyn and Cornyn lights him on fire, as he has been doing, then Paxton limps out of that runoff in an even worse condition. And so what Paxton really is hoping, I have to imagine, is that he does a big enough number tonight that Donald Trump concludes that there's no way Cornyn can win the runoff and just says, I'm endorsing Ken Paxton and I want this thing to be over and to stop damaging Republicans. So that's Paxton's need, is not to finish first, but to finish first in a double-digit commanding sort of way.
Aaron, what are you watching for as the first results start to roll in? Basil, can you pull up on the Republican side? Again, these numbers are super small. Texas,
Yes.
You're going to get how many Republican votes tonight, give or take?
Gosh, I don't even know. It could be any number. It's been really hard to kind of gauge this electorate. But one thing you have to know about these early numbers is these are early vote numbers, right?
Yeah.
So these numbers are not game day voters. These are not voters that went out today. These have been in the bank. That's why you're seeing these results early. So you will see these numbers continue to move throughout the night. But I take Chris's point here that if Paxton has a very strong showing this evening and can get Donald Trump in the race at his back, that is helpful going into the runoff. Another thing is what Cornyn will try to do in a runoff, to Chris's point, is dump as much negative as possible on Paxton's head to try and drive up his unfavorables to get him limping out of a race with him. However, whoever the Democrat winner is still is trying to chase that blue fever dream in Texas. And whether that is Talarico or Jasmine Crockett, and again, a very tough electorate to look at on the Democrat side, I believe, because you can't model for that.
Is it a blue fever dream, though, if it ends up becoming Paxton versus Talarico?
Absolutely, because look at the last set of people that Texas Democrats have put up that are kind of the same ilk. You have Beto, I was born to do this, Robert Francis O'Rourke, right? He looks like a moderate, but he ended up being a wolf in sheep's clothing. You had the lady in the sneakers who stood on the floor forever. You had Colin Allred, a former NFL player, who also was a former congressman, try to go and take that Texas Senate seat and make it blue. Texas Democrats are trying to play the long dollar game on this. They think the more money they dump in now, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, they can make the flip then. Nobody actually thinks that Talarico, I believe, in my estimation, has a chance really to win the general because he is of that same ilk. But again, as they start to litigate his record and his stances, that's still not where a Texas electorate stands.
Chris?
Well, a good way to think about this is that if it's Paxton and Crockett, it's just a garbage fire. It's just a heinous, awful. Both parties hate it. There's spillover into other races because they're both they say the most amazing things. And it will be a gaffe-prone, ugly mud battle that Paxton wins ultimately, because Texas reverts to when you have two bad candidates. The bad candidate who is in line with, as Aaron says, with the basic makeup of the state is going to prevail. The danger for Democrats, Talarico definitely can beat Ken Paxton. Definitely can beat Ken Paxton.
I just don't think the electorate's there yet. I really don't. Not with the way that the state has worked.
Well, I know you think that. I don't take that away from you. He can beat Ken Paxton, but he could also be. I was getting ready to pay you a compliment before you jumped in. But it could also he could also get vetoed, right? And it could turn into a suckhole. Here's one thing that we know. The political consultants of Texas are happy because this is going to be a really, really, really expensive race.
It's already been
We're talking
$100 million in so far, just in
$100 million,
yeah.
and we haven't even gotten to the runoff, and we're talking about a $300 or $400 million. We're talking about approaching $500 million for a Senate seat in Texas. And here's the funny part for Republicans. They don't have to do this. They could have just kept John Cornyn for another term, and it would have been no race. It would have been no race. It wouldn't have mattered. It would have been fine. But they got a bee in their bonnet, because I think the breaking point for Texas Republicans with Cornyn, after the Uvalde shootings, he did a bipartisan, very light, but it was gun control. It was light gun control, but it was still a gun control measure. And this was for the Texas primary electorate. Now you've gone too far. We always knew you were squishy, bushy, too nice, we don't like you. And so they decided, basically, we can have whatever we want. And we can have Ken Paxton. And the more the National Republican Party and the more people like me say, I don't know, that seems pretty risky, the better they liked it. And so now they find themselves in a difficult cycle. And Talarico, the best thing that you can say about, the two good things you can say about James Talarico, he is smooth. He's to the point of being oleaginous, maybe, but he is smooth. And he has no record, right? You go through and you can find the 9 votes in the state house or whatever, but he's 8 years old. There's no there isn't a James Talarico, and the Republicans will build one, but he is a credible threat.
Okay. Aaron, hang with me. Chris, hang with me. Grace Panetta is with us, politics reporter at the 19th, covering the candidates. I'm told you can share your screen. Grace, hello. Thank you for being with us. You can share the screen. You're not here for the pizza, but it's all good. It all works out. Tell me, do we have Grace?
Hold on.
There she is. Hello, Grace. We'll send pizza your way. Company credit cards are a beautiful thing. If you can, show me what you're looking at, excuse me, in Texas right now. Obviously, it's super duper early. I'm seeing about 220,000 votes on the Democratic side in the Senate race, and not much different on the Republican side. What are you looking at? What do you notice right now? And then I'll get Chris and Aaron in here to sort of give their 2 cents as well.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Of
Can
course.
you see my screen all right with the DDHQ?
If that's your screen, yeah, let's do it.
Yes.
Rock and roll.
Oh, amazing. Yes. Okay, that is me. So far we are seeing, again, some very, very early returns coming in a couple of places. Obviously, as we discussed earlier, not going to get anything from Dallas County itself for a little bit. But looking around some of Tarrant County, which is Fort Worth, there we see some early results coming in. Jasmine Crockett also leading there, which is not surprising, with Tarrant being, so adjacent to Dallas. And then if we look over here in Denton County, another suburban one that has, a large population of non-white, a lot of Asian Hispanic voters, which is really interesting demographics in this race. We see Talarico ahead so far by about 12 points. These suburban Dallas counties are going to be really interesting to watch. And then also we're seeing a couple results come in here. This is Hays County between Austin, San Antonio. Talarico performing really well there. As expected, this is likely going to be that Austin-San Antonio nexus is probably going to be a really good area for him. So some interesting little tea leaves we see as results start coming in.
What about on the other side?
Oh, yes. Let's look over on the Republican side. Let's see. Right. All right, it's taking a minute.
As you load there, what stands out to you, Erin?
In the early returns here for the Democrats?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're seeing the split you would have expected, which is Crockett to really perform incredibly strongly with a black turnout location and with black voters. You will see that. I bet you as you continue to see these numbers pull in, that African-American dominant communities will move towards her. Because when you looked at what was available, and again, this was a very hard electorate to model and try to figure out who to pull in this primary, because Democrats haven't had a competitive race like this in a very long time. So to actually see how these numbers shake out, her numbers will remain strong with the black community. I think that Talarico is going to lead with men and women when you look at where this goes down the road.
Chris?
We have some Galveston vote in, but very little. We don't have anything from, if you do a triangle from Austin to San Antonio to Houston. Oh, we're getting a little Houston in now. Okay, I see.
It just popped to 306,000 votes.
Fort Bend just came in. So if you take a triangle between Austin and San Antonio and Houston, which would be like, the size of a normal state, Texas is too big. If you were to draw the perimeter of that triangle, basically, that is the space in which you need, if you are James Talarico, that's where you got to do it, right? San Antonio and Austin and the more affluent Houston suburbs, he's got to nail it there. And based on what we saw in the early vote and where the early vote was coming in, it looked very good for him. But if you're James Talarico watching these numbers come in, you're probably starting to feel a little anxious. I don't think he has reason to feel anxious yet at basically no vote in, 12% of the vote in.
Right.
But he wants to see those squares around Austin and San Antonio start lighting up.
Grace, you back? There we go. Cool. Yeah, I was just about to go to the Republican side. What are you seeing there?
Yes. So starting to get in some results from the Dallas area. As noted earlier, the results for the Dallas Democratic primary are going to be delayed, but not in the Republican primary. So here we see with some of the early returns come in, John Cornyn with over 50% of the vote so far, Ken Paxton with about 30%, Wesley Hunt, lower down. That's kind of, an interesting sort of barometer. Also, Cornyn leading in some of the suburbs. As we, it's kind of interesting to think about how the dynamics on the Republican side and the Democratic side might mirror each other. Suburbs and places where there are affluent, college-educated people, that's where we would expect to see some, stronger returns for Cornyn, or so he would hope. And then it's in kind of the more rural areas where Ken Paxton will likely have to really overperform and put up a strong performance. We'll also obviously be looking in the Houston area, which is where Wesley Hunt is from and represents, to kind of get a good idea of what numbers he's putting up there and how might that play into the Cornyn versus Paxton breakdown. So here's a county near Houston, Fort Bend County. We see Paxton with 43% of the vote in, Cornyn 40%, and Weslly Hunt, even further down. So it's going to be really interesting to see where. Yeah.
Can you take? Yeah, your cursor, your mouse is right there. I was going along the border.
Yeah.
Is that Henry Cuellar's district where the yellow is? I was curious to sort of see how that's playing out there on the Republican side of the aisle on the border.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay, let's take a look here. Yes. I am not going to try to pronounce this because I will butcher this. But yes, this is a Rio Grande Valley county. And so far, we have Cornyn getting about half of the vote here. Goes without saying, the Hispanic vote's going to be really, really critical in both the Republican and Democratic side. And yeah, it'll be really interesting to see kind of the interplay between the Senate Republican primary and some of the down ballot races. Here, Webb County, another major Rio Grande Valley, predominantly Hispanic county, we see no candidate with the majority of the vote in quite yet, but Paxton in the lead. So it's definitely still anyone's game. It's very early, but really interesting to see how these dynamics are shaping up.
Hey, Chris and Aaron, I'm looking at 400,000 votes there on the Republican side, and Cornyn up, call it 45 to 39, call it up almost about 6 points right now, with somewhere in the area projected to be about a fifth or a sixth of the vote in.
Not enough. Look, John Cornyn rallied in this race. There is no question about that. He was on the canvas, and it looked like there was no way back for him. And he has very effectively, this has been a very effective campaign. And the way that it was effective, Cornyn made nice with MAGA. He made his piece. He posed with in the early going, he posed with a copy of Art of the Deal, sitting like, studying. Yes. He made the overtures and got Trump to a period of neutrality, and then just melted Ken Paxton's face. The ad that said all of the words, right? Didn't allude to things that Ken Paxton had done, said the words about his marriage, about his divorce, about his new romantic partner, said it all.
Right.
And, the thing in a primary is, if you have an ideological fight in your primary, you can generally leave it behind in the general, because it's not a fight that's relevant to persuadable voters. But if your attacks are characterological,
right,
and basically John Cornyn's point about Ken Paxton is that he is morally unfit to be a United States senator, morally unfit to represent Texas. Once you've said that all carries over. So Cornyn, if Paxton is the eventual nominee, has done great service for the eventual Democratic nominee, because they've already laid the groundwork in voters' minds.
It also eliminates a little bit of the punch behind it. And to be fair, Paxton has won 2 statewide races already with all of this information out there, right? None of this is necessarily incredibly new. I know the divorce part of this is the newer portion of it, but a lot of this information is out there, and Texas Republican and Texas voters statewide have continued to support Ken Paxton. And so even with this massive, that last ad that went directly to your point, Chris, said the words directly, they're just going to try to drive up his unfavorables right now to muddy the waters to see where this runoff can go. Since we're in March, the good news is that, and what, we're going to be looking at, the runoff, a little bit down the road here, that is still a very long time in politics. This is not an August primary. This is not a July primary. It's not a September primary. This is a May primary going into the runoff here. All of that bears out. Ken Paxton, or whoever comes out of that primary, if it is Ken Paxton in the runoff, has an entire spring and summer to drive up favorables, to spend money on ads about his image, about his family, the ad with his daughter and her husband, right? The messaging you will see, I would imagine, coming out of the Paxton team post-runoff would be purely to run up his favorables. And with all of that, that is a long time and a lot of opportunity for him to try and change the votes going into November, if that's versus Crockett or Talarico. And one other note on this, if Jasmine Crockett doesn't win tonight, Jasmine Crockett's political career as we know it is over. She's not going to win, but she's not in another primary. She's not going to be able to go back and take her House seat back. She can't win and run that race. So we really could be looking at, the next big Dem political commentator on TV giving a concession speech tonight.
Yeah, I will, as only one point of quibble, say that.
Chris, come on, we were getting along so well. You were giving me compliments.
I will say that Paxton has not faced voters since his impeachment, right? So he won in 2022 and then had the impeachment in 2023. And the argument in the impeachment was he just won. He just won. You can't remove him because he just won, even if all the things that people say are true are true. So I think there is some unproven reserve in Ken Paxton. As for Jasmine Crockett, I wrote for today. It was this week already feels like several days longer.
I hear you.
That in Texas, Black Democrats in Texas wanted a Raphael Warnock who can do it all. And I think they have a Stacey Abrams. And Georgia and Texas are not politically that dissimilar. Both were late to become fully Republican after the big shift in the 1970s and 1980s. Both have substantial urban areas. Both have substantial Black populations. There are some similarities there. And what Georgia Democrats figured out was how to win, right? They figured out how to stop being bad at this. And the answer wasn't a Black candidate or a white candidate. The answer was good candidates. John Ossoff is a good candidate. He's a white dude. And he does well. Raphael Warnock is one of the most progressive members of the United States Senate. He is way out of position for Georgia, ideologically. A state that really loved Brian Kemp and reelected Brian Kemp, who's an inorganic rock of conservatism, also likes Raphael Warnock. And in Texas, the Democrats have tried it the other way, right? So they tried Colin Allred, bad year. Don't run for Senate in a quadrennial presidential year in Texas as a Democrat. Don't do that.
Or to get Ted Cruz, I'll just give TC the credit on that one.
Is Grace, are you with us?
Yes, hi.
Okay, Grace, come on in, Basil. You can take me off the camera. I'm the least important person here. Also, look who's here. Bill Salmon, what's your title? It's a lot of words.
What?
I'm
Microphone.
SVP of editorial content. That and $4 will get you a coffee at Starbucks.
There we go.
He's the host of the whole hog. That's what he is.
All right. Take me off and put Grace on. Although maybe you need my microphone.
We got Grace here.
Okay.
Hold on. And
here's what I want to note. And Grace, if you can maybe bring up your screen, or Basil, if you can do it.
Yeah.
But I'm on the Democratic in Texas, the Democratic Senate primary race. And I'm down there in Webb County on the border. And Chris, you said, if we can go to the Democratic side, Chris, you had talked about how the Latino community would be pulling in the direction of James Talarico, and Bill and Chris and Grace and Aaron. Talarico's at 65% in that border community. And I wonder if that's going to be... I don't know who wants to take this. If that's what we're going to see across Texas tonight, maybe Bill. Hello.
Well, we talked about, look, the most likely outcomes, according to conventional wisdom on both sides, is, first of all, that Talarico has the momentum in the closing. There's not a lot of good polling, as Chris pointed out earlier, but the indications that we do have is that Talarico's closing a little stronger than Jasmine Crockett is, and it's a very close race to begin with. So the chalk, as we say, is that Talarico is going to come out a little bit ahead. And on the Republican side, the chalk is that, wow, it feels like there's a lot of energy with Ken Paxton and he's going to beat Cornyn. And Chris rightly pointed out that Paxton's goal is probably to finish, not just beat him, but to come out 10 points ahead of him. Let me give you the alternative. What's Cornyn's goal? What if Cornyn does better than expected? I would say if you come out of this somehow and Cornyn's 5 points ahead, forget 10 points.
You got it, brother.
I think that gives President Trump pause and says, oh, well, maybe we do stay with the normie, we stay with the conventional Republican, and maybe that ends the quest by Paxton. So, this isn't a foregone conclusion yet. There's such little polling, and the polling's so bad that this could go any direction here, right?
I think it's just hard. It's hard to really poll in Texas because it is an unregistered primary state. Like, it's not party affiliation, so it's really hard to be able to give those definitives. But I still don't think that even if Paxton and Cornyn get in this runoff together, that if somehow Cornyn outperforms himself, Trump's going to jump in at his behest, because Ken Paxton has been such a fervent supporter of the president.
Yeah.
And we have seen where the president might even have a friend in a race. New York, Elise Stefanik, Blake.
Oh, that's cold.
You know
Why
what I
you got to
mean?
bring up Elise Stefanik? That's just
Here I am,
ice
New Yorker,
cold,
tried
lady.
and true. But Elise was a hardcore supporter of the president, but the other guy was his friend, you know? And so he stayed out of the race, and that was enough for Elise to say, "That's it, I'm out." And so I don't think
by that
reasoning, I don't think it'll
by
give
that
him enough
reasoning,
to step in for Paxton or Cornyn.
By that reason, well, I think he would step in for Paxton.
Yes.
Talking to people familiar with the thinking of the president's team's operations, however it has to be couched in Washingtonese. If Paxton has a barn burner tonight, they expect Trump will step in, bless Paxton, and basically push Cornyn out of the race. But I think Bill is 100% right that there's a scenario in which if Talarico is the Democratic winner and Cornyn has kept it close, if it's 5 points or less, if it's a situation like that, I think certainly there would be a lot of people around Donald Trump who would seek to prevail on him, that it would be in the party's interests, if not to endorse Cornyn, to step out. Now, here's what complicates the whole shebangy bang, which is you can't vote in the runoff if you didn't vote in the primary. Those are the only, the universe of possible voters. So the stakes are extraordinarily high for Cornyn because he's got to get his people out this time. You can't do, now I'll truly date myself, Thad Cochran. If you want to get in the Wayback Machine with me, Thad Cochran, who was too old for office before it was cool to be too old for office, and they ran him. And the way they won that they won the runoff was by bringing new voters in. My understanding of Texas law says that is not an option. That if Cornyn doesn't have a very good showing, he can't bring in a bunch of new independent voters to vote in the runoff. So the universe of voters that exist today will be the universe of voters who exist in May.
Hey Grace, hang with me for a second. I know I name checked you, and I wanted you to share your screen, but let me bring you in after this. Jeff Skelly, Decision Desk HQ, who is where are you, Skelly? Skelly there? Oh, let's bring up his audio.
Skelly's there, but I think Skelly's mic is still muted.
You got your mic on, bud? Jeff, can you put your mic on? Do you have your mic turned on?
You know what?
Oh,
I don't know.
Sorry. Where are you? You at home or you in town with the team?
After all, right?
I'm with the team.
You're with the team.
They're like on the other side of this wall from me.
All right.
So.
Share your screen with me if you can and show me what you're looking at right now. And then how long do we have you for, Skelly?
10 more minutes, 12 more minutes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So Jeff's with the DDHQ team pouring through the numbers. They'll be calling races, etc. He's got far more important things to do than to talk to me, but gracious of his time. What are you looking at across Texas right now? Or if there's, I guess North Carolina, we don't have numbers in yet. What are you looking at across Texas?
Yeah, sure. If you can see my screen now, I believe I am sharing it. But I was looking, you guys were sitting there talking about the Republican primary for Senate. I was sitting there looking at it. And, it's maybe no surprise Cornyn's leading in the votes that have come in so far because they are pretty much all early votes. They're all ones that were cast before Election Day. I would expect that if you are sort of thinking about the Republican electorate, you're probably going to have more conservative-leaning voters make up a larger chunk of the Election Day vote. And with that in mind, I would expect, this is going to be sort of a game of, okay, how much can Cornyn bank in the early vote as Paxton probably catches him and then moves ahead by how much? And so that's I think the real question with what's going on in the Republican primary. I think Cornyn's in a really, really, it's obvious, but he's in an extremely difficult position. That Thad Cochran reference, Thad Cochran got like 49%, and Chris McDaniel got a little over 49%, but there was a third candidate who got like 2%, and they both ended up under 50. John Cornyn's not getting anywhere near 50%. And to me, the problem for Cornyn is that a candidate like Wesley Hunt, who my suspicion is that people voting for Wesley Hunt, I've zoomed out here a little bit so people can hopefully see he's getting about 14% right now in third place, is that they were looking for an alternative who wasn't Ken Paxton, but they're not necessarily fans of John Cornyn either.
Right.
So if you're sort of thinking about a runoff, I would, unless Donald Trump comes out and endorses John Cornyn, I'm pretty skeptical about his chances.
Hey, Skelly, flip on over if you can to the other side of the aisle, because there's about 630,000 votes in, and you'll see what I'm seeing. Again, it's early. It's probably only give or take a quarter of the vote, but you're looking at a 2,000 vote separator right now out of 630,000.
Absolutely. This, I mean, it's interesting. The vibes of this race have seemingly gone really sharply towards James Talarico. The polls were very close at the end, though they were kind of all over the place, which I think speaks to what Aaron was talking about earlier with the challenge of figuring out who the heck is actually going to vote in a primary where you don't have party registration. And obviously turnout is very high on the Democratic side. They may end up with more votes cast in the Democratic primary than in the Republican primary, which has not happened in a midterm cycle in Texas since 2002. To be clear, Republicans won everything in 2002, even when that happened. So in the general election, but the point being that in terms of being animated, that there's clearly a lot of Democratic interest. So if you're trying to figure out and trying to poll this race, figure out who's a likely voter, that it may be challenging to some more people who might not have seemed like likely voters traditionally in a primary might be likely voters this time around. And I could see that kind of helping either of these candidates. And a lot depends on where they're from or where the voters are from. I think the expectation is that, Crockett will do extremely well among black voters. Talarico may end up leading among Hispanic voters, which you were pointing out Webb County along the border earlier. So it's interesting because if you think actually as a point of comparison, the 2020 primary, so for the same seat on the Democratic side, the runoff in that race between MJ Hager and Royce West, Hager won narrowly and went on to lose to Cornyn in the general election in 2020. But that race was very much, the map is beginning to look similar in terms of the colors, and that was that West did better sort of in the Houston, Dallas, and eastern part of the state where there is a larger black population in Texas, and then the West was colored purple for Hagar, who did very well in the Austin area, which is where Talarico's from, and did better among Hispanic voters. And the fact that she did better among Hispanic voters ended up being the thing that won her the election.
Hey, Bill, I'm going to get Bill in here in a second, but I'm being told Michael Whatley projected to win North Carolina by DDHQ. That sound right to you?
Yes, I don't think we had any expectation that there were going to be any surprises in North Carolina.
No surprises, but I just wanted to get that out there. There we go. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
I just want to take a point of order here, and I want to step back and address the fact that we are all on a show called Data Nerds, and I'm loving that so much because Chris and I have spent an awful lot of our so-called careers in decision desks.
Such a young career.
Where we were surrounded by people who proudly, like a badge of honor, called themselves data nerds. And I think they kind of made me almost kind of an honorary data nerd because they indulged me and let me kind of pretend like I was a data nerd. But this is where it's at. We've got Grace, we've got Jeffrey Skelly, we've got the whole team of DDHQ on the other side of the wall from Jeffrey that are crunching these numbers. And we're just getting started here. So let's embrace our inner nerd. Let's not look at this as, oh my God, we're calling this the data nerds. Yes, we're calling this the data nerds. This is a good thing. Maybe we could run that animation again, the data nerds animation. I love it so much that this is going to be our maiden show, and there'll be many more data nerd incarnations to come.
Yeah, there's one thing that I will say about the Democrat primary right now, especially when you're looking at these early results, is the Hispanic heavy counties and how they're going to move. If those move heavily towards Talarico, Crockett doesn't have a base enough to make up the difference here. And also, Talarico's team made a concerted effort and brought in people specifically to drive up and bring in Hispanic voters for him. That's a really strong base.
We just got a vote dump. And Talarico has moved into a tabulation lead. But can I ask, Blake, that we look at Fort Bend County on the Democratic side?
Sure. And Chris,
in suburban Houston?
Yeah, Skelly, pull that up for Chris. And I just want to let Chris know we only have Skelly left for like 3 more minutes. So
which one is it? It's not. I was like, it's one of the Houston counties. I'm looking like an idiot here. It's the green one. There we go. I was like,
north side. Yeah.
No, it's the one that got votes, and I was like, I knew. I was like, Houston. When you said Fort Bend.
Go on, Chris, and I'll let you two take it from here because we only have Jeff for a few more.
Well, Jeff, it looks like this is. I'm not bullish on Crockett, but you look at the result here. She did well and she did better in the early vote. I think the broad expectation was that Talarico was just going to swamp her in the early vote. Here's Fort Bend County, which is not poor, right? These are pretty affluent suburbs. There is a substantial Black population there, but these are higher end college educated voters, and she and this is, I assume, basically all early vote. And she did well. Do you see anything in there?
I mean, I think it's basically the Houston Metro and the Dallas Metro to me for Crockett are places that she has to win, and she has to win them by substantial margins because I think the assumption is that Talarico will win the Austin area. Will probably, and if he ends up winning among Hispanics, he will win the San Antonio area. And so you could have a bit of that east-west thing that I was talking about earlier that we saw also in the 2020 primary runoff for Senate. I think it's one of those things where I don't want to like overstate what it means, but I think that if you're Jasmine Crockett, this is what you want to be seeing, is that you want to be in the lead in a county in the Houston area. You're not from the Houston area, you're from the Dallas area, but that you're sort of taking care of business in the places where we know that you are, just in terms of thinking about the demographics and knowing what we've seen in polling of this race, like where are you more likely to probably do well? Well, if you're actually doing, roughly as well as you were hoping to do in those places, which I think might be the case here with the Fort Bend early vote, getting 60% right now, I think that's probably a good sign for her. It doesn't mean she's won the election, but nonetheless, and I know you don't mean that. That's more just like a reminder. We've got a long way to go here, but there's a substantial amount they vote in. She's leading. It's a place she needs to be leading.
I'm just saying the Calci dorks got freaked out and went too hard on Talarico. Talarico looks like...
Yeah, you're right about that.
It looks... I'm looking at a map that looks right for Talarico. He's doing... And as the vote starts to come in Central Texas and all the way down, it looks like it's right. But I'm just saying, when I look at Fort Bend just as one, but you could pick other counties... Jasmine Crockett did okay in the early vote there, right? And it wasn't a swamping. So I think whatever the betting market said, 90% or whatever for Talarico, I think they were a little high on their own supply.
Jeffrey, can I ask you a question?
I don't think you should be buying in into a prediction market in a primary like that. If someone's at like 88, I think that's not a good wager. Don't do that.
Is the conventional wisdom that Crockett goes in with a large lead among African Americans, Talarico sort of a medium lead among white voters, and a smallish lead among Hispanics, and therefore if he increases that lead among Hispanics, that he'll be in good shape? Is that sort of the rough outlines here?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Texas, we were talking about Georgia and Texas comparisons earlier. Georgia's population's roughly is about a third African American as a state. Texas is not small, but it's I'm pulling it up here. Yeah, I was like it's 12-13%. depending on if you're looking at the census or you're looking at the most recent like American Community Survey data. The point is, it's not nearly as big, and so have a much larger Hispanic population. But for Crockett, if you're sort of thinking about the makeup of the primary electorate, which again is a little unclear and hard to know for sure, but black voters are going to make up a much larger percentage than 13% of the primary electorate. So if she's winning 80% of that vote, that's a big deal for her. But I think at the end of the day, it is a situation where the Hispanic vote probably is what swings this election. And if Talarico is leading among Hispanic voters, but Crockett can keep those margins down, or even carry Latino voters, that would be, that would hand her victory, presumably.
Skelly, we got to let you run. The folks who
I will be back.
The folks who pay the bills need you, but
I will return.
But you will be back.
My car there
Jeffrey Skelly, thank you. Aaron, are you running? I was told you were running.
No, I assume that's why our good friend is here.
Lindsay Granger is stepping on in.
In,
are you with
Thanks,
us for the
guys.
rest of the night? Or?
Yeah, I'm around. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's Grace. Is Grace out there?
Yes, hi.
Still here.
Hello.
Hi, Grace. What are you looking at right now?
As we're seeing more and more of the data and results come in, I am really interested in some of the numbers coming out of Galveston County. If I can see it here. This is something that a lot of other really smarter than me election analysts have pointed out as kind of a bellwether county to look at. And in the results, we have about 60% of the vote in, and it is very, very close with Talarico at 50, Crockett at 48%. That's a really interesting one. And then, of course, we just got some votes from Austin, the Austin area.
Can you share your screen with us so we can just sort of
sorry.
along together?
I thought I was sharing.
All good.
Sorry, my bad. Let's see. Try this.
Hi,
again.
Lindsay Granger, by the way. Sorry.
Hi. We're just doing this live.
We'll do it live. We're just moving people in and out here. Lindsay Granger, co-host Rising on the Hill. Sorry, Grace, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I figured for
no worries, you're good.
Those watching,
is my screen working now?
Basil, can we bring her up? Or?
Yep, just
Give us a
about.
second.
And there you go.
Amazing. Okay, yes, sorry. So this is the visual of what I was just talking about here in Galveston County, which, again, someone pointed out as a bellwether. And then I was just also going to look at Austin. This is where Talarico is putting up a really strong result. I think this is exactly where he wants to be. This is kind of his home base here in Travis County. And also, getting some more results up here in the Texas Panhandle, which is, a little bit more rural, an area that Talarico has been barnstorming in quite a bit. We're seeing some solid results for him out there. And Crockett also seems to be putting up some good numbers over here in East Texas. This is a pretty rural part of the state, a lot of counties with rural Black voters, and we see her doing pretty well here. I'm also, still definitely interested in the Dallas suburbs, and I see we got some, that's Denton with Talarico doing a little bit better than Crockett over there. Let's see. Yeah, she's still definitely on target in Tarrant County, which has Fort Worth. And yeah, I'll just be interested to see more from the Rio Grande Valley. We have some in from Cameron County down at the border. Talarico at 63%, Crockett at 33%. Again, this is probably what you want to be seeing if your team, Talarico, are super strong numbers down here in the RGV, which, as Jeffrey just pointed out, this really could come down to Hispanic voters. And I think I'll be very interested to see how the border continues to fill out.
By the way, DDHQ projecting, again, to no surprise, former North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper to be the Democratic nominee for Senate in the Tar Heel State, which means
look at the turnout
that in North Carolina.
Yeah,
you were. So this sets up the former governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, widely popular among Democrats, was talked about as a vice presidential candidate for Kamala Harris not too long ago, up against Michael Whatley, the former chairman of the Republican National Committee, someone who is very close to Donald Trump. And those two going head to head, there is going to be a ton of money spent on that race. Lindsay, I'll get to you in a second, but Chris, you started off the show by saying you were going to be interested in turnout in North Carolina, and I see you throwing up the deuces there. What's going on?
So the two House races that I mentioned in North Carolina, one for the Republicans with a competitive primary, one for the Democrats. And by the way, the interesting Democratic one is a Metro Durham research triangle. Incumbent Valerie Foushee facing I don't know whether she's a self-described Democratic progressive, whatever she is. She's the farther left, harder left candidate, Nida Alam, and this is a fight. Foushee, the incumbent, is ahead by 7 points right now in the tabulation. But I mention that only because there's a pretty level playing field between the two parties. Neither of the parties in North Carolina has a competitive Senate race. The way is clear for both of them. There have been, so that looks like the estimated vote in Roy Cooper's race is about 330,000.
Okay.
The Republicans are almost half in. There's more of their vote counted of what's expected, and there's about 30,000 fewer. I do not read too much into this, but I just said, and Bill, before you joined us, I was talking about how when you have a boat race like this, it's just like who's more excited to go out. So if there's only one thing that I take away from North Carolina, it will be like which of these two parties is willing to go vote, even when they just want to go vote. They just can't keep themselves at home. And if Democrats keep up some sort of 50,000 in a state with rough parity between the parties, if there's an advantage there, maybe it's something.
Let me get, I was just about to get Lindsey Granger's thoughts, but should we listen to Roy Cooper? Let's listen live to Roy Cooper here for a moment.
Just for the accent.
Yeah.
Amazing wife, Kristen.
Actually, you know what? When he gets to it, he's thanking some folks. What do you make of what Chris is outlining there in North Carolina and the showdown that's about to come?
Yeah, I think the results aren't a surprise here. We kind of knew that Roy Cooper would progress forward against Michael Whatley. I think there's an emerging theme here that Republicans on their side are betting on MAGA to be the answer to the North Carolina kind of quandary that Tom Tillis put everybody in. Somebody needs to take his spot, and Democrats are okay with that because they don't think that's a winning idea. I think what Tom Tillis has said is that to win statewide races, you have to appeal to kind of the moderate voter and the voter that might be the swing voter, even though a lot of people want to lean further into their parties. And so we know that Tillis was a Republican that was willing to break away from his party on key votes. He criticized Trump and disagreed with him on a few things that are counter to even some of the MAGA movement. And Trump has accused him of grandstanding in the past. But now when you think about filling that seat, is it a Democrat that's going to also be more moderate? Is that what they're looking for? Are they going to go with Michael Whatley, or is Roy Cooper someone that's a trusted governor going to take that position? And we're going to see
I'm
what
so
happens.
glad you brought up Tillis's name because we're so focused on the two candidates tonight that we sometimes forget that this is a seat that's being vacated voluntarily by a Republican. And you really zoom out and why all of this is important tonight is because the Democrats have an outside chance, probably aren't going to do it, but there's a chance that they could pick up the control of the Senate. They'd have to net 4 Senate seats. This seems like one of the ones that could be one of those 4. And if, look, the outcome of tonight's election in North Carolina, face it, was a foregone conclusion. We knew that these two were going to win their primaries, but there's already been a lot of polling of head-to-head matchups of them going forward into the general, and Cooper is ahead. Now, we have a lot of football to play. This is the beginning of March, and we got to get to the end of, beginning of November. But this seems like one of the big pickup opportunities for Democrats, and you're right, it's because Tom Tillis, who broke with Trump, realized how miserable it is to be a Republican on the outs with Donald Trump, is retiring. And, and by the way, that's the reason we're paying so much attention to Texas, too. It's a little more of a long shot in Texas, but that's another possibility for Democrats. Now, look, there are 4 possible matchups in Texas. And 3 of the 4 are probably going to be just fine for Republicans. That is to say, Cornyn versus Crockett, Cornyn versus Talarico, and Paxton versus Crockett. I think generally speaking, the Republicans feel like they could probably handle that. And to be honest with you, even the 4th scenario, Paxton versus Talarico, in a state that has a built-in Republican advantage just by virtue of it being Texas, I might still give the Republicans an edge. But it's that last scenario that gives Democrats hope. Paxton versus Talarico, because Paxton is seen as the damage candidate, as Steyerwalt pointed out. Talarico, even though he's probably just as left as Jasmine Crockett, is stylistically more in line with the political sensibilities of the Texas electorate. In other words, he's a seminarian, he's a man of God, he's not this wild bomb thrower that Jasmine Crockett can sometimes be. And so I think that's
the Republicans feel like they could probably handle that. Really hurt, and to be honest with you, even the fourth scenario, Paxton versus Talarico.
Hold on one second. Oh, no, we're good.
Bill was so good we had to hear it twice.
That's known as feedback in the TV world.
Lindsay,
that's what happens when you're
right
the boss.
now. The reason for that was because Robbie will be joining us in a moment, and somebody didn't listen to the rules and muted their mic when they came in.
As we watch Roy Cooper, Bill, Chris, Lindsay, and Grace. Grace, can you pull up the North Carolina 4, or Basil, can you pull up North Carolina 4? Because this is the this is the race there in North Carolina that we've been watching at the House level. The incumbent, Congresswoman Fushi, versus the repeat challenger, Nina Alam there. What's going on there? Because it looks like Fushi's up by 8.5 or so.
Yeah, seems like a little over half of the vote in. Valerie Fushi appears to be holding off her challenger, Nina Alam, for now by a pretty, solid margin. This is the race that a lot of people are watching as kind of a litmus test for how the Democratic Party is going to handle the issue of Israel going forward. There aren't a lot of races where foreign policy is a major issue, but we've started to see the role of pro-Israel groups who have been super involved in U.S. House races in recent years. And the Democratic Party's changing relationship with those groups. And that's this House race here in North Carolina is really kind of a microcosm of that dynamic, only exacerbated by the recent events in Iran, which, of course, Nina Alam has really, emphasized and played up in the final stretch. So it'll be really, really interesting and potentially a bellwether barometer to how many other incumbents on the Democratic side are vulnerable to primary challenges this cycle. So definitely one to keep watching.
Grace, I thank you. I think you'll be back with us later. Hopefully, I'll catch you then. Bill, any final thoughts?
I would just say the thing I'm looking for tonight, coming out of tonight, is where is the energy in both parties, but it's particularly in the Democratic Party. Is the energy, on the left? Is the energy on the, as Jasmine Crockett has a really good night, you see some of these smaller races in House seats where you have a progressive versus more of a moderate Dem. Do the progressives do well? Because that is not only going to tell us something about the midterms in November. These are obviously the first big primary of those midterms. But it might even tell us a little bit of information about where the herd is going to break in 2028. And that, if Democrats are emboldened and if the left is emboldened and says, wow, we're getting the candidates we want, maybe we do go with like an AOC in the 2028 campaign. These are the things that will inform those decisions down the line. And that will in turn impact whether J.D. Vance has a better chance or a lesser chance, or Marco Rubio makes a move in. So all of these things are interconnected. And I know there's a danger of extrapolating too much from early primaries and elections several years out. But it's what we do as data nerds. They let us
I was literally just about to say, do you want to say data nerds one more time? And you just got it in.
Data nerds, data nerds, data nerds.
Bill Salmon, you're the best. Appreciate you. Bill, thank you. Ravi Suave, come on in, co-host with Lindsey Granger on Rising. We got Robbie out there.
Good to see you.
I feel like I can just turn this over to you and Lindsay here, and
Hey,
Steyerwalt and I can go watch him.
Hey, sorry I violated the rules. I couldn't miss a single second of the excellent commentary here, so I had my volume on.
You're all good, Robbie.
Hey, what stands out to you, Robbie?
What's that?
I'll give you the floor, whether you want to go anywhere you want
sure.
in Texas. Or...
I mean, like everybody else, I'm most interested in Talarico Crockett, which we're still paying attention to, right? But Talarico, obviously, that's good good news looking for him. I see what the prediction markets have to say. Just as you people were saying, this could definitely be a possible pickup for Democrats. If you look at the general, MAGA seems very prepared to elevate Ken Paxton, a less electable candidate, though it's still Texas. It's still a red state. And obviously that's not decided yet either. But I think you have Democrats gearing up to put themselves in a very competitive position, and perhaps Republicans a little bit less so. That might end up being the lesson of the night. It'd be a very familiar lesson, frankly, in all of these kinds of primaries. Can Democrats stay disciplined and pick people who can win? And are Republicans still, putting forward people who they love, MAGA loves, but in a 51-49 country, are those the kind of candidates you want for general elections? I think that continues to be the theme in a lot of these primaries.
All right, so polls are closing. It's 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock out in Texas. Polls closing there in Texas tonight. Let's just sort of reset here for a second. Lindsey Granger, Robbie Suave, Chris Steyerwalt here with me. Basil, let's just show the numbers real quick on the Democratic side, if we can, and then we'll flip on over to the Republican side, because as I see it, guys, there's about let's just go statewide if we can. As I see it, about 915,000 votes in. There you go. James Talarico with an 8-point lead at this point. It's believed about 39-40% of the vote total is in. And then on the Republican side, and this is the Senate race there, John Cornyn up about 5.5 so far on Ken Paxton, as I see it. Can we flip on over there real quick? Yeah, thank you. Oh, this is Arkansas. Yeah, there's a race. There's primaries in Arkansas tonight too. But the big ones are in the state of Texas tonight. So there you go. What is that?
And the polls just closed. In West Texas. Yep. So that other panhandle out to El Paso.
Yep.
And this is where, if you're Ken Paxton, you need to catch up. Okay. Right. Ken Paxton has not had a tabulation lead that I have seen all night since we have seen vote in. And let's say we've got 35-40% of the total vote in for the Republicans. Paxton still has not led, and he is going to win in rural Texas. And if we look at the gold on the map, if we look at the gold Paxton on the map, you can see that he is the space in between the metro areas. But I understand this is going to a runoff, and I understand that that the focus is rightly on the Democrats this evening in Texas, because it is more likely to be decisive. Ahmad Hassan coming in with 1.1% of the vote is not likely. It does not look like to tip this into a runoff. But I think it is remarkable that John Cornyn has continued to lead. Now, there's going to be a bunch of rural vote that comes in, and a lot of those counties are going to fill in gold. And I would still expect Paxton to pull ahead at the end. But Cornyn has made this a fight. And the fact that Wesley Hunt has been down there at 13.5% or whatever of the vote says that the Cornyn campaign has something to feel good about tonight.
I'm really focused on Texas also, because I think if you go back to the election, it's a state where Democrats had a pretty catastrophic night in 2024, as they looked like they were making some inroads in 2020. And then polling showed us that Kamala really didn't fare well with Hispanic voters. And so I know a lot of the polling showed that Black voters would support Jasmine Crockett, and a lot of the early voting showed that white, especially male voters, would support Talarico. But I'm interested to see where the Latino electorate falls, since that's such a huge slice of the pie in Democratic primaries in Texas. I would like to see where they fall. And I also think the big picture takeaway from tonight, whenever we get the full and final results, is that this ideological direction of both parties is really being tested, from MAGA versus the establishment to combative progressivism to unity-focused Democrats. Even though Talarico and Jasmine Crockett are fighting for similar things, they have two totally different strategies that will kind of open up and tell us how the parties want to handle things moving forward. And even the Republican Party, if they want to lean more into MAGA, if the MAGA base is going to prevail post President Trump, and with Democrats, if Mamdani in New York really was a sign of the future, or if that was just, overemphasized, and maybe Abigail Spanberger was the right choice for the State of the Union response, and that's the direction that Democrats need to lead into, with somebody who's more like that, like Talarico, who's seen as somebody who's more moderate.
Robbie, thoughts on the Republican side?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mr. Steyerwalt here that so far it's a respectable showing, certainly for John Cornyn, for the incumbent, but it's only a real good thing if he avoids the runoff entirely. So he's got to get north of 50%. I mean, then it's over. Then it's a hallelujah moment. But then the question becomes, if we don't get to that, who is the second choice of Wesley Hunt voters? And the polling I've seen, or the survey results I guess I've seen, suggest that their second choice is disproportionately Ken Paxton, not John Cornyn.
So, Robbie, we were talking about, before you joined us, we were talking about how the prize for the Republicans between Paxton and Cornyn tonight is a Donald Trump endorsement. And what Ken Paxton is looking for is a dominating victory, so that Trump will be, if you'll pardon me, call in an airstrike and say, I'm endorsing Paxton. He is the clear winner. He can't be beaten, and put the pressure on Cornyn to exit the race and not keep it going. For Cornyn, a win tonight looks like it's a remote chance, but a Trump endorsement. If Cornyn is far enough ahead that Trump would actually say, it behooves me to just go ahead and try to get this race over, especially if Talarico is the Democratic nominee. But also, if it's a win for Cornyn, if Trump just says, I'm still not going to endorse, and Cornyn can continue to melt the face of Ken Paxton for another 2 months.
Yeah, that makes sense. Keeping Trump at least out of the race with this strong showing here, encouraging him to sit on the sidelines for now, would be certainly a terrific result for Cornyn, for the incumbent, and to keep it likely our hold, still likely our hold in all cases, but we're talking about the national environment being less and less favorable for just Republicans in the abstract. They're the defenders. They're facing what the incumbent party faces, the party's president faces in the midterms. They're benefiting, I think, from the fact Lindsay was talking about what is the direction of the Democratic Party. I think right now the Democrats are benefiting from some ambiguity, that they don't have a face right now for Republicans to say, this is the party of AOC, you're terrified of AOC, we're going to make you terrified of AOC, or whoever it is. It's still up for grabs, and that ambiguity is helpful for Republicans to not have someone to portray Democrats as this person. That can't last forever, because they're going to have to pick a new leader eventually, or one will be picked for them by their Democratic voters. But right now they don't have to commit, and I think that's helping them right now.
But I'll tell you, Robbie, I was thinking about Paxton. If he does prevail in this, Republicans are going to have to spend a lot of money heavily defending him in November in a general election. I mean, I know he has a lot of support from MAGA. He has a lot of support from even Turning Point USA, because before Charlie Kirk passed away, he was fond of him. But he has a lot of liabilities. To remind everybody, he is in an acrimonious divorce. He's impeached by the Texas House over corruption allegations. He's charged with securities fraud. I mean, so these are all things that are going to come out in the general election. And whether it's Talarico or Jasmine Crockett, those ads and the money flowing, if it's anything like it's already been, which last time I checked was 22 million for Democrats and more than almost 90 million for Republicans, is going to be so much more, because you have to then defend everything that's going to be used in every single campaign ad as they move forward.
Yeah.
The term in Texas is enough money to burn a wet elephant. And you are 100% right about Republicans having to, if it's Paxton, no matter who the Democrats nominate, the Republicans will have to buy a lot of very expensive media in Texas. But don't forget the Beto effect. Texas has thrice in the past been a sinkhole for Democratic contributions for losing races. And it's the pyrite. It looks like it's almost there, and it feels so good, and the money comes flowing in. I would just tell Democrats to bear in mind they're at a substantial cash disadvantage right now compared to the Republicans. Democratic fundraising has been lackluster. The Republicans are the one with the additional resources. And if they're going to gamble on Texas, it's a very expensive place to make a bet.
Robbie Suave, I know you got to be up early. Lindsey Granger, you got to be up early too.
I know.
We will bid you.
Does that mean
good
I'm being
night.
released? I don't know. Let me go.
Am I doing you a favor? Actually, no.
Lindsay's just going to stay there.
Are you coming back later? Lindsay is coming back later.
Oh,
she's
man,
got a
So
Robbie,
I don't know if I just made it better or worse for you.
Well, I'm going to bed.
You're going to bed. All right. Later, Robbie. Thank you. Lindsey Granger. See you back here
Okay,
in a
see
few.
you in a little bit.
Steyerwalt with me. I think I got you, bud, for another 10 minutes. Let me bring in, you've been hearing me say Basil. Basil John, hello, with our next star stations. Mike Madrid as well, who I hear knows all things Texas. Basil, can you bring us all in?
Yep, I'm about to bring us all in. There's a lot of routing that goes on here.
I know. Chris, have you seen the setup? Have you been in this room?
Yeah, I was with you like a week ago. You forget? Come on.
Yeah,
what do I have to do? I get no pizza. I get no love. What can I do?
We've got a
what
whole.
can I do?
We've got a whole. Can you turn that thing
Yeah.
on?
I was here.
show
Let
this,
me
just so
show
people-
this while I try to play
just so
around
people
over
see
here.
what we're doing.
Yeah, so we got
where we are. We have this nice little
we have a little setup going on here.
Yeah, exactly. Mike Madrid, you there?
He is coming in. He was in and then he went back out. And it looks like Mike Madrid's back in now. Mike, can you hear us?
I can hear you okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you, man.
Sorry about that.
You're all good. We're we're trying to get everybody all potted up in here.
Mike, so as we see it right now, about 1 million votes in on the Democratic side in Texas. James Talarico with about 5.5, about an 8.5 point lead or so, and on the other side of the aisle, John Cornyn up 5. How do you see it right now?
I'm looking at more of the precinct level right now.
Yeah, take me through it. What stands out to you? Can you first off, when we pop you in, maybe you can share your screen with us and sort of show us what you're seeing at the precinct level.
Eric and I have been kind of going through that a little bit, some little snafus there. First of all, Talarico, dramatic overperformance, kind of in the white suburban districts. Really, really strong Latino break. Crockett, really, really big break in African-American precincts. The variable going into tonight was going to be what do Hispanic precincts look like, and they were breaking from Webb County and Starr County, kind of in the Rio Grande Valley area, very, very big for Talarico, all the way into Houston down in Harris County, where Talarico is getting plus 30 in some of these Hispanic precincts. So it doesn't matter whether it's urban, rural, first generation, fifth generation Texan. Latinos broke very, very strongly for Talarico. That's got to be a big part of the story in assessing this and what that means for the party going forward, especially when there was such significant overperformance from black voters for Crockett, white voters for Talarico. This is going to be a big part of that story. You're also seeing Cornyn performing well on the Republican side in Tarrant. I was joking around on social media saying this is the country club Republicans fight back. Like they're putting a stand up there. We'll see how this ultimately plays out.
Right.
But for the moment, that's I think a lot of us are surprised by some of the performance that is getting in some of these precincts.
So can you can we pop up his screen?
Let's see, Mike. Can you share your screen with me, and then I can.
Well, I'm not looking at anything terribly exciting, but I can move some stuff around. So hold on, let me pull.
You don't think these numbers are exciting, man?
Well, it's bouncing around on my dome more than it is actually on the screen. I'm kind of looking at the.
If he's just playing Tetris, I'm gonna just
No. There's I'm in
solitaire
Arkansas for some reason.
Maybe listen, it could be pinball for all you know at that point. Well, Mike, what numbers are you trying to look at right now? Are you trying to look at Texas Republicans, or are you trying to look at?
Let's look at the Democratic side first, really quickly, if we could. Let's start in the Rio Grande Valley, down in the lower left point there, the Webb County, the Starr counties.
By the way, Steyerwalt, I want a point or two since I pointed out Webb County about 45 minutes ago. I'll do a little this.
You know what's up. You know what's up.
Go for it, Mike. Sorry.
See that purple little corner there in the lower left?
The one nearby El Paso.
No, lower left, all the way down towards the point there, all the way down the.
There we go.
Yeah, click on those, that bigger square one. See, that's 64. This is a 94% Hispanic community. So when Talarico's pulling 65%, what's the estimated voting? About 64% of the voters in. This is the same break as when it was with the early vote. So you're looking at a 65, 30% break there. That's now there's not a whole lot of votes. There's not a whole lot of raw votes in these parts. But the reason why I wanted people to kind of take a look at this is this is that rural area that saw these massive rightward shifts that everybody has been writing about, talking about for a really long period of time, right? This is that kind of MAGA country, and everyone's sending reporters down there and saying, what's going on in Starr County and Webb County. This was the real variable. This was going to be how do these voters perform? And I think everybody who's looking at the Latino vote is saying a 65-30 split is pretty shocking. I mean, when I first saw those numbers come in, I said, it doesn't matter what the Harris County breaks are over in Houston. Let's go ahead and pull out now and take a look over at Harris County and Houston. Keep that in mind, that 65-30. When you're seeing that kind of a break, even in rural, border country in the Rio Grande Valley, you're going to see him doing well in places like Harris County. Now this 53-45, I don't know if I don't know. We can't get more granular data than this right now. But where Talarico's performing in some of these really urban areas, urban districts, is again in urban dense, Hispanic dense precincts. Very, very different type of urban demographic than you saw what we were just looking at over in Webb County. But that's keeping Talarico competitive. This is where Harris, where Crockett, really needs to drive the vote share up. This is where she would really need to dramatically overperform, and she's not getting the margins that she needs out of kind of that home base, that home country area. So that's explaining a lot of it. If you go up into Austin now, which is take a look over at Travis County. Can you drill into there? Or Austin, Travis. Look at Talarico's numbers. Now, this is where he's from, but this is look at those look at that spread there, 76-23, with about 64% reporting. Can you pull up the racial composition there? This is a very white district, very white area.
I can try my best, but I think there's somebody who might be more qualified. Grace, I think you're still there. Would you be able to? I believe I still have access to your screen. Would you be able to
yes.
Pile through this for Mike for me? Because I'm not as well versed as you are with this one.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no worries.
I flipped the hot potato over to you, and you're flipping it over to Grace now. We don't know what we're doing
This is how they do it in Congress. Anybody who wins this, that's how they get ready. They kick the can down the road. That's how it goes.
So look at Travis County, right? This is 57% white in Texas. This is Austin. This is where Talarico's from. This is his home base, and he was getting over, like 70% of the vote here. Now, not nearly as populous, not nearly as dense as Harris County, where Crockett's from, but that's a big margin. And that's when you're starting to look at this kind of, white progressive margin, is where Talarico needed to dramatically overperform. And he is, by most estimates, he is. And you can look at some other, if we could pull back, Grace, if that's okay, and let's go swing over now to Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Yeah.
And take a look at some of those.
Yes.
Some of those numbers.
Okay, let me get back to the main. Main results. Yeah. Oh wait.
As you guys do that, Chris, are we about to lose you? 9:20.
Yeah.
You are.
Okay.
It's hard to say goodbye, but yes.
Let me just get your final thought, Chris, as there's basically 1 million votes in the U.S. Texas Senate on each side, as Roy Cooper and Michael Whatley are projected to win as expected in North Carolina. Your just overarching thoughts here at 9:20 on the East Coast, 8:20 in Texas tonight.
The primary season could not be off to a more appropriate start for this year. You have in North Carolina a decisive, a clear advantage for Democrats for the first of the 4 pickups that they need to make the Senate competitive. And they've got it. Texas is a story about which party wants to win more, right? The thing about a midterm election is that the midterm electorate is a third smaller than the quadrennial presidential electorate. These are the high propensity voters. These are not the folks who only come in every 4 years because they see it everywhere and it's the president and they feel like they should. These are high propensity voters, and the choices that Texas Republicans and Democrats are making right now is the constant test in American politics between what feels good and somebody who tells you what you want to hear, and somebody who can be competitive in a general election. And you couldn't have a better way to start this 2026 year than having it come down to Texas and having these 2 goat rodeos going on at the same time in Texas. We're not even halfway in Texas, so I envy you guys getting to when that. And I'll just say before I leave you, keep looking at that Democratic map and look at Dallas. That's going to stay empty until 10 o'clock. And then at 10 o'clock, it's going to fill in. And then we will know whether Jasmine Crockett has a chance to close that gap, because that's her home county. And that's a huge trove of votes. And those polls have remained open. So you have, as we would say in the television game, you got a whiz bang coming at 10 o'clock. So that's cool.
All right. My guy.
Thanks,
Chris
guys.
Firewall. I'll catch you tomorrow. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
See you, man.
All right. Going to get out to Grace and Mike. Hang with me if you can. I'm sorry for cutting you off there, but I knew I was running up against Chris's clock. Jeffrey Skelly is coming up here in minutes, but I'm told Joe Khalil is up with us. Joe K., you there?
I am here. What's up, everybody?
Joe, so you roam the halls of Congress every single day, and the focus couldn't be any brighter tonight on a couple folks that you cover.
Yeah, so I am watching on the Democratic side right now the Jasmine Crockett Talarico numbers come in. I think it's pretty interesting that, as we were following the polling in this, the polling seemed to just be all over the place. There were a ton of internal polls that you felt like you couldn't really trust because, they were significantly different, I thought, or significantly different enough, based on whatever where you were getting them from. But as we see Talarico like 5 or 6 points ahead right now, what comes to mind is just something that Chris said, which is that, which side wants to win more. Again, most of what I saw before this seemed to suggest that Jasmine Crockett was moving, kind of may have been leading. And, you look at the other side and Paxton down just a couple. I think what this also might tell us, Blake, and I guess we got to wait for
pull up Texas
full results to come through. But I think what this might tell us is this is a continuation of the, profile of primary voters having changed, because it used to be this sort of reliable Republican, sort of old school conservative, that was the more reliable midterm voter that would show up. And now you've got in the sort of high propensity elections, the presidentials, President Trump turns out to pull in big numbers, but when he's off the ballot, it's a different electorate. And so if that theory were to hold, then that would obviously benefit Cornyn over Paxton. And you think on the Democratic side, that might also benefit Talarico. So I'm just wondering if those things hold, if we have more evidence now that
we've been talking a lot about this race, obviously at the Senate level. Joe, stay with me here. Mike and Grace and Basil, look at what's going on in Dan Crenshaw's district.
Is Dan Krenshaw losing?
Explain to me, Mike and Grace, what's going on here in Dan Crenshaw's district with 63% estimated It's believed maybe there's somewhere around 25,000 votes, and he's down right now by about 7,500. Ladies first, Grace, what's going on?
Yeah, this is wow. What a moment for those who have followed Crenshaw's career. He really broke out onto the scene as kind of this rising star when he won the first time. Obviously, he's a veteran, and someone who was kind of at the forefront of this newer generation of House Republicans. And since then, he has broken with his party on some things, particularly on foreign policy. He's not been as much in that interventionist line. And now what it's come to is that Trump he did not get Trump endorsement for his re-election bid.
Did he want it? Did he try to go for Trump's endorsement?
And this is kind of that's a good question. I don't know the exact answer to that off the top of my head.
But either way, it wasn't there.
Yeah.
Bottom line, and
yeah.
Is that why we're seeing this, or there are some other factors in play?
Yeah, I mean, I think Krenshaw and the president have had kind of a relationship has been strained going back a few years when Krenshaw was not one of the members of Congress to vote to subvert the 2020 election results. And has since taken a bit of a different tack from the Trump line on issues like foreign policy. But yeah, this is, it just goes to show how powerful the Trump endorsement or the lack thereof there still is, even in the case of a sitting incumbent congressman. Now, that also puts into kind of a different light the situation in the Senate primary, where Trump notedly did not endorse John Cornyn or Ken Paxton. And if he had endorsed Ken Paxton, that we might be seeing a very different story tonight. But yeah, it is. And this is also kind of an outgrowth of, or in line with kind of what's been called the Texas sort of civil war in the state legislature, where you saw a lot of, conservative insurgents oust incumbents at the state legislative level. So definitely a theme we've seen in Texas politics.
Hey, Mike, what's going on here?
Yeah, look, Grace nailed it. The other other part of this is Ted Cruz endorsed against him and was actively working against them. There was a scene where Ted Cruz and Dan Crenshaw got into kind of a shouting match or were barking at each other at the airport, where Crenshaw was saying, why are you working against me? What's this about? So, like as Grace said it perfectly, it's kind of the civil war. Crenshaw's always been viewed as not MAGA enough, not Trump enough, and those attacks have come from, especially being in Texas. And a lot of, his style has been to kind of poke the bear a little bit too, is to kind of like engage it and not try to back down to it and kind of, establish his own independence. But, Cruz, that ran sideways with Ted Cruz. I'm not saying that it was the Trump stuff. It was just their styles ran into each other. And so Crenshaw, I think he was he knew he was short for this seat after a few years. He released internal polling showing him in the mid 40s. Which was a little bit peculiar. Usually, you don't do that unless you're confident you're going to be way ahead of an unknown candidate. So I think he saw this coming, and this was one of the surprises I thought that was not really a surprise that could likely happen tonight.
All right, Mike, Grace, stand by. Jeff Skelly's coming in here, I'm told momentarily. Joe K, you've been covering Dan Crenshaw for years, and it looks like potentially you might be only covering him for another handful of months.
And just before we go to Joe, just to answer the question that was asked earlier, Crenshaw was the only House Republican in the running in Texas that did not receive an endorsement from the president. He was the only one.
There you go. Joe?
And I'm not sure if he wanted it, but he expected it, because he is on the record saying that he told me he was going to endorse me, referring to President Trump at one point. And so he obviously didn't get it. Something changed. Crenshaw's one of those super interesting, political figures. He's different. I think he was not ever scared to buck his party when he needed to. I think a lot of that started with the Ukraine stuff. He was very unapologetically pro-Ukraine, give Ukraine weapons and money and support. When the MAGA crowds really soured against that, that's kind of the start of it. And from that point on, his sort of MAGA credentials were always questioned, and you saw it a lot by people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Ted Cruz. Not Ted Cruz. I meant to say Tucker Carlson, but obviously Ted Cruz recently. But yeah, he's a person that again, and didn't really try to get back into the good graces, as some people often do. He just said, yeah, whatever, I am who I am. So he's a really interesting figure. And I guess I'm not shocked, given where we are now the last couple days. But if you told me 3 months ago that we would be here with Krenshaw being, getting primaried in this way, I would have said that was pretty shocking.
And you know what happens? You know what happens next if this situation holds? Is President Trump says, "See,
yeah,
you need me."
Yeah, you want my endorsement. You want my endorsement, and that's leverage now for whatever he wants to get out of the members now.
Yeah. Is Skelly with us just yet?
Yes, we do have Skelly. Skelly, can you speak up for us?
Yeah, hey there. I'm here.
Jeff Skelly with Decision Desk HQ. Are you guys close on this one, or I don't know if you can answer that. If I put you in a bad spot asking that, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. I mean, my understanding is basically where we're at is we're just maybe another drop or so of maybe a little more election day vote. But I have to think that the election day, I mean, the trends here are terrible for Krenshaw, especially since we expect the election day vote to help Ken Paxton. I don't see why there would be a lot of help for Dan Krenshaw in those votes. If they are helping Ken Paxton in the Senate race, they are probably more aligned with Steve Toth, his primary opponent. So yeah, Krenshaw is obviously in a very difficult position, and he's of course one of I think there are 5 incumbents who could lose tonight across North Carolina and Texas in the House. So he just may be the first as things are progressing here.
Let's go around the state. Let Basil, if we could pull up Texas, the Senate on the Republican side or either side, Democratic or Republican, doesn't matter where we start. But since I said Republican, let's go there.
I was going to say, pick your poison. You want Republican?
Yeah, let's go there.
All
so, Skelly, there's about 1.1 million votes in, expected to be give or take half there. And right now, the margin is, call it 3 by John Cornyn. What stands out for John Cornyn, I should say? What stands out to you here?
Well, I think it's that as we get more votes, Paxton has been catching up, and I think that speaks to just sort of what we expected, which is we saw sort of the votes that we got early were like the Dallas area, and that was a place more affluent, wealthier, more college educated voters, more country club Republican type voters maybe showing up and voting. In the Dallas area, and Cornyn continues to lead there. He has a slight majority in Dallas County, but as you get more votes from the rest of the state, especially outside of the central parts of some of those metro areas, you see Cornyn catching up, and I suspect that we will continue to see that trend, especially as we get more election day votes. That Paxton will surpass Cornyn, and then it'll be a question of by how much.
Aaron McGuire's with me. Aaron knows Texas and Republicans inside and out. Before we move over to the Democratic side. Hello, welcome back. Nice to see you
thanks
again.
for having me again.
Of course, thanks for being here. What stands out to you as you start to see this map take shape as it's possibly halfway home in Texas tonight?
Yeah, I think you see a couple of things. One real thing that's sticking out to me right now is kind of the fracture within the Republican Party, right? You guys were talking about how, Cornyn really outperformed in the early vote, and now game day vote, election day, you are seeing more come in for Paxton. That's kind of the line that you see within the Republican Party right now. Is it early voting, or are you a MAGA supporter? Are you a Trump supporter and you vote on election day? Are you that hardcore Republican base? And I think you're actually seeing that play out in real time right now in Texas, where the election day vote is going to swing and continue to pick up for Ken Paxton, because those voters for Paxton are going to be the more MAGA hardcore base Republican type versus the Cornyn portion, which are likely a more moderate, or as some would call traditional Republican. Because remember, for John Cornyn, and you got to look back at Cornyn's, real trajectory here in the Senate. Just a couple of years ago, he was a few votes away from being Senate Majority Leader right now. And instead, John Thune is, because Thune and Cornyn were both in that kind of 2-3 leadership spots next to each other at the same time, with Cornyn being term limited out before Thune was, being term limited out of that second position as whip before McConnell left his spot as leader. So then that's what let Thune come into the 2 spot and then ultimately the top spot. For Cornyn to be even in a tight race right now and in a tight primary shows you the drastic shift within the Republican
Do you think
electorate.
we would have been here? Like if I told you, like, Aaron, this is what you were talking about at 9:30 tonight?
Yeah, I think if John Cornyn had become majority leader, had become where John Thune is, I think that he would have had to align himself much more closely with the president. And I think in that case, you would not be looking at what you're looking at this evening.
What about the fact that he's not and he's here right now?
Hey, listen, the man's a fighter. Nobody confuses big tex John Cornyn there, right? The man he is an institution in Texas, but this also could end up being an election, especially with redistricting where incumbents are going to fall.
Let's go to the Democratic side. Skelly, what are you seeing there? I'm looking at James Talarico up about 8 with about, give or take, 40% in right now. What stands out to you? Where do you want us to zoom in, if you do at all, that you think might tell a story here?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're at a point where there's probably about 1.2-ish million votes remaining by our estimates, give or take. And Talarico's up by about 100,000 votes, and we do expect him to do better in the early vote. So as we get more election day vote, what I'm watching is to see if Crockett is going to start closing, because I think the expectation is that
where
she would do better.
Where does she need to close? Give me a.
Obviously Dallas is going to be a big thing when it reports, and I assume that will close the gap significantly for her. But I think you would also, if you're her, would like to see Harris County, where Houston is, turn a darker shade of green down there, and improve in terms of the margin that she's pulling in Houston and in some of the counties around Houston. Because basically in the eastern part of the state is where Crockett should be doing best. We just know demographically, look, she's going to do very well among black voters based on what we know about polling from this race, and the eastern part of the state is where you have a larger portion of the black population in Texas. At the same time, I think the other thing that she's going to want to see is, if you're sort of looking at the shading on this map in terms of colors, light purple as you go west. Don't try to avoid it all being dark purple for Talarico, because that means that she's at least keeping the margins down in some of those places where we expect Talarico to be winning.
So, Jeff, I know it's not apples to apples, but I'm looking at 1.14 million Republican votes in the deep red state of Texas tonight, and 1.187 Democratic votes. Again, it's not apples to apples because all the votes aren't in, but is that going to be a story potentially? Might we see more Democrats coming out in Texas tonight?
Well, it's very possible. I mean, the projection in terms of turnout has been that Democrats would narrowly have more votes cast in this primary. And that is notable because that has not happened in Texas in a midterm for the Democrats to actually have more votes cast than the Republicans since 2002. Now, the thing to remember is that in 2002, it's not like Democrats went and won a bunch of offices in November. So I think it's one of those things where I don't think people should overstate what that would mean. I think what you have is an unusually competitive and like two candidates who have gotten so much attention in Jasmine Crockett and James Talarico, and there's been a lot more spending. So I think it's sort of like a lot of Democrats are engaged, and they're engaged enough that they're turning out for a primary because they actually are really interested in the two candidates who are running in a way that they haven't really had that opportunity in a very long time.
Skelly, I want to take you, Basil, I want to take him to the Fushi race in North Carolina. But before we get there, our Libby Dean was just like walking the hallways here because all she does is work 24/7. Hello, Libby.
And she brought snacks.
I did bring snacks.
They're now on the floor.
This is a good place to bring Libby in, News Nation White House reporter, because the one thing that hasn't happened in this race, Libby, and we saw President Trump in Corpus Christi, Texas last week, just 4 or 5 days ago on Friday, he has not endorsed. Do you get the sense that he may at some point down the line? You're at the White House every day.
Potentially. I mean, he said.
I love how you just shrug that off. Maybe. We'll see.
He said, as he was standing on that stage in Texas, that's what he said, is all three candidates were literally sitting there. I mean, they've been clawing for this endorsement in the last months that they've been campaigning. They upended their schedules to make sure that they were there when he was in Corpus Christi.
Right. All three of them were there.
Might I add, that was on Air Force One. When he decided to
make the
launch,
Iran decision.
A major side note. But he said on that stage he had pretty much made up his mind on who he wanted, but he of course didn't announce that. But what stood out to me is there's only one of them that flew with him on Air Force One, and that was Cornyn.
Yeah.
And so I think that could be some kind of signal maybe that he's trying to send, and he actually bunched together Paxton and Cornyn, and then he shouted out Wesley Hunt separately.
Yeah, he didn't even mention that he was
He called Wesley Hunt a good guy, and he called Paxton and Cornyn great guys. Do with that what you will.
Wesley Hunt here, right? The redheaded stepchild of the three on the ballot, right? Like this is a Cornyn Paxton race.
And not the redheaded stepchild. Jeez.
Called out.
But look at it. I mean, he's gonna sit somewhere between 10 and 20, right? When this is all probably done and over. Right. So no matter what happens to him, he never really broke into this race in a way that Paxton and Cornyn did. And to your point about Cornyn being on the plane, I mean, it's an official visit, so like I could see that more than Paxton bringing himself up to DC to get back on the plane to come
But
back.
Cornyn's the one in the room when Trump is sitting there at the conference table on Air Force One talking about Iran. Those other two candidates weren't. Right. What does that say?
Hey, can we pull up the North Carolina race real quick?
I'll get you the North Carolina race.
Jeff, what's going on there? Because as Grace was outlining with us a little while ago, that's sort of a race, speaking of foreign policy and sort of the future of the Democratic Party. You've got an incumbent once again fighting off a challenger for the second race in a row. What are you seeing there in North Carolina with the Congresswoman Fushi race?
Right. I mean, I hadn't seen what you guys discussed about this, but it is certainly a race that could be sort of signaling. It's just sort of the start of what we're going to see repeatedly in this election cycle, which is a Democratic challenger, in this case, Nita Alam, running to the left of the incumbent, who's Valerie Fushi, and criticizing Fushi for having had support from AIPAC, for having support from pro-Israel groups. And this is going to be a part of a lot of House primaries as we move forward, because Democrats, especially on the left of the party, are very displeased, and we know from polling that even just your lay Democratic voter has a pretty negative opinion of Israel right now, and so that the whole like, oh, you've taken money from AIPAC attack really might have legs. So I don't know if Alam is going to actually pull this off against Fushi, but the fact that we're sitting here and it's really close. Fushi had to have a lot of help toward the end. A lot of money was poured in from a group that's linked to AI. She actually holds an important committee position related to the potential of the regulation of AI. And so she got a bunch of money late in the race to catch up with Alam, who actually had more money. So Jeff, it's very close, which really speaks to what's going on there.
And I know you got to run, so let me leave you with this. Texas 18, this is two incumbents because of the redistricting there in Texas. This is Al Green, Congressman, versus Congressman Christian Menefee. And it looks like, can we get to that real quick? What's going on there?
Oh, you may not actually see it on that list, which is just
what's happening to Al Green out there, because I'm getting text messages about him.
Yeah, so Al Green is trailing by about 5 points right now, and to Christian Menefee, but Menefee is under 50%, and in Texas you have to have a majority, as we've talked endlessly about the Republican side in the Senate race. So right now, at least, it is very possible that race will go to a runoff, but Menefee does have a slight lead. Green, my understanding is he actually might be in D.C. right now. He's not even in the district, and had not held any campaign events toward the end of the race. So there was a feeling that maybe Menefee was going to sort of walk away with this. I mean, the fact that Green is this close maybe it might even force it into a runoff. Maybe he's not done yet. you might say. Menifee's been campaigning for like almost a year because he was campaigning for the old 18th district, which he just won in a special election. But he's been campaigning it for many months because it took a long time for that race to actually happen. After Sylvester Turner died in March of last year, they had the first round of voting in November, and then there was a runoff that was at the end of January. So he's been a congressman for a month, but he has been campaigning nonstop for most of the last year. So in that sense, he's maybe more familiar in certain ways than Green, who has not been in a tough race basically since he first won a place in Congress in 2004.
Jeffrey Skelly, you're the best. What's your newsletter called? Give yourself a shout out.
Oh, the Bellwether, the Decision Desk
Follow.
HQ Substack. We've got a couple newsletters. We got a podcast. We're doing things.
All right, we're doing things. I'll catch you in like 30 minutes or so. He's got to go.
Sounds good.
Do the vote total stuff. Skelly, thank you. Real quick, Joe Kay covers Congress for us. Libby Dean covers the White House for us. Joe, final thought real quick.
I just think bigger picture here, what Texas tells us is it is hard when redistricting happens, whether you're in the majority or not, to have to run in new districts. And I think part of what you're seeing from Dan Krenshaw is, yeah, he didn't get the president's endorsement, but he's also running in a district now where most of the voters who voted for him 2 years ago are now different voters. So he's high profile, but you got to reintroduce yourself. That's not an easy thing to do. Mike Madrid, I remember from my Sacramento days, will know that right now Kevin Kiley and Ami Bera and all those guys are going to have to run different races now just because the lines have changed. So I think we sometimes forget, like, oh, the environment and Republicans are going to have an off year and there's a blue wave coming. But when you redistrict, if Republicans control redistricting, they do put their own members sometimes in tough spots. And the same is going to go for Democrats in California. So I think that's something to remember. And just one last thing on the Texas Senate race. If I am John Cornyn right now, I am still panicking, freaking out a little bit because Wesley Hunt getting 12 to 13%, I would venture to guess that majority of that is not going to go to John Cornyn when there's a runoff. I think Ken Paxton has a much better chance of picking up the Wesley Hunt vote, and it looks small now relatively, but again, when it's a two-person race, that 13% is going to matter a lot.
Libby Dean, final thought.
My final thought is that it's typical that the people in power, Republicans, are the people who don't win. And I'm very curious to see how Iran affects this. I know I keep bringing it up, but it's very clearly on my mind. I'm curious to see if this drags out, if the war with Iran drags out, how will that affect the midterms for the president? Because the big talk that we've talked so much about on your show is the economy and how that's the main priority. But war changes things.
Yep. Libby, nice to see you. She was literally walking down the hallway. I was like, hi,
now
get
I
in
eat
here.
my snacks.
Do you want to come and talk?
It was so casual, too.
Libby, thank you. Joe Kay, good night to the wife and the kids. We'll see you here tomorrow. And the kid, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Selma.
Libby, thank you.
Yeah.
Lindsey Granger is going to be jumping in. Mike Madrid. Hello, Aaron McGuire. Hello, Mike. I haven't heard from you in a little bit. What's the story right now in Texas?
I think just more of the same. I think kind of to what Joe was saying, though, it is fascinating. You're looking at possibly three incumbents losing: Al Green, Dan Crenshaw, and then Gonzalez is, he's hanging in there, but on the rope. So you could see three incumbents losing, and that's a big deal when you do move districts around. That is a big part of what is going to happen. You add on top of that the variabilities of war and unpopular war. But look, I'm still going to say the economy, when the economy is going bad in a midterm election and the incumbent party controls all levels of government, it's not going to be a good night. That's never happened before. So I think that explains a lot of what's happening in Texas at the moment.
Did the dynamic just change?
Because of Iran?
Yeah.
It really depends on what happens with Iran, right? If energy
And I'm not saying, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I don't mean specifically to Texas. I'm just talking general. Yeah.
Generally, I totally get what you're saying. If energy prices go up, if things become more expensive in everyday life, gas, natural gas, things, those means, then yes, it will play a big role. If there's a large amount of casualties, that'll matter as well. It matters in terms of how long it goes. If this ends up a few and the United States is victorious and our soldiers, sailors, and airmen return home to heroes' welcomes And if I was the White House, I'd be making sure those big battleships came home right along the U.S. coast, and I welcomed home everybody. Then yeah, it can have a good effect as well. I don't think that this is a George Bush 04 type of situation. I do think that this is different. Obviously, those are very different situations and outcomes, but there's an opportunity there that this could play negatively or positively.
Lindsay?
I think a lot of people pro-MAGA part of the war is how this out. Democrats saying I think the mix. Also a conversation about party looking closer.
You think that conversation happens now, though?
Well, I'm just saying that. What is his, like in certain races, he hasn't supported a candidate. Does that matter anymore? This is all litmus test that we're in right now.
I guess ask Dan Krenshaw, right?
Right. I think that, if, like, for example, Ken Paxton, the only reason why we're talking about Texas in this way is because Ken Paxton's probably going to win, and a lot of people think that he probably will lose depending on who the candidate is, or has a higher chance than ever before. And mind you, Texas is never like this battleground state. For the most part, it's went Republican for years. And so now that Democrats see a chance to actually make some inroads there after falling way back in 2024 in the general election, is that because of the fact that President Trump went too far in certain ways? And by having Ken Paxton as a mirror to what President Trump stands for, is that also too far for Texas?
But one thing I will say about Texas voters is the Latino population in Texas is much more fervently pro what Trump is doing in terms of immigration, about shutting down the border. And especially in Texas, shutting down the border affects their everyday lives. I went down there with Senator Cruz with 19 members on a CODEL. Good Lord help me. It was like Susan Collins and everybody. We almost lost a few in the river. It was insane. There was like cartel members across the road. I was like, get away. Capitol Police can't save everybody. Let's go. They are much more fervently conservative on immigration policy than they are reflective of the rest of the country. And I think that that's something that has to be considered when you're talking about what the dynamics are, because Talarico is likely about to perform very well with a Hispanic Latino community in Texas, and one that his campaign has directly targeted. However, those voters are a Democrat primary voter, so they're already swinging that way, and they're just trying. This is an opportunity for an enthused Democrat base to show up because they haven't had a competitive primary, versus the general election where that demographic still trends to the right and is not completely rejecting, and not as fervently rejecting as many other states are, the aggressive tactics you saw on TV from the Trump administration.
Hey, Mike, I hear you got to run, so let me get your. Let me get your thoughts before you have to jump out.
No, just as somebody who's been studying very closely the Latino vote for 35 years, this is the first time I have ever in my career seen Cubans in Miami, Dominicans in New Jersey, Central Americans in Virginia, Puerto Ricans in New York City, Mexican Americans in Texas and California all vote the same way. This is an extraordinary moment, and it's not driven by border security. It's overwhelmingly a function of affordability. And this rightward shift that we saw, what I was looking for tonight was some sort of semblance, some sort of continuance to justify what that meant even in Texas. And Texas Latinos are not that much more conservative Mexican Americans than they are really anywhere else. Certainly look at New Mexico, Arizona, and Nevada. But that's not there. Yeah, there's nothing in this evidence tonight showing that. So I think you're going to see this is the last real swing voter in America. This is a completely nonpartisan, anti-party. The Republicans were talking about this racial realignment that was happening, completely unfounded, just like the demographics is destiny argument that Democrats were making during the Obama years. They're both foundationally wrong. We're witnessing a de-alignment tonight, proves that yet again. And I think you're going to see a really historic shift back, maybe even bigger than what you saw to the right in 2024, going to the left in the midterms, largely as a function of economic concerns.
So what's the net you think?
Of that vote or of the state?
Yeah, no, of that.
Oh no, I think you're going to see a dummy mander. I think at least two of those 5 congressional seats they will lose that they carved out that started this redistricting war. I think it was a huge mistake in terms of making an assumption that because they were having a good cycle, which was really more of an anti-democratic vote than a pro-MAGA vote. There's almost no evidence of that from a polling perspective over the past 3 or 4 years. And it's gone. Whatever sort of existed is gone. The net is you're going to continue to see the Latino vote swing further and further to the extremes away from the parties that are in power because it's less partisan, it's less racially polarized than any other group in America. And unfortunately, it's been being driven more by what it's voting against than voting what it's for.
As I look at the prediction markets, and Jaron Zhao from Kalshi is going to be joining us here in like 10 minutes or so. Ken Paxton started the night with an 83% chance of winning in Texas, and he's down to 68% right now in the prediction markets. You think that's 69%? You think that's about right?
Cornyn?
Paxton was at
Paxton
was at 83.5% in the prediction markets to start tonight, and down to 69, and Cornyn is was at about 13%. He's up to like 20 or 32. Excuse me.
I was surprised at how Cornyn performed in Tarrant County. I thought he did much better than I think most people were expecting. But I don't see how the break, even with that slight overperformance and that key demographic, that country club Republicanism that's not the dominant part of the GOP base. It hasn't been for a decade, and certainly is not in Texas.
So Tarrant County right now, John Cornyn, 47 to 37, 44,000 votes to 34,000 votes. Wesley Hunt. What's your sense on Wesley Hunt? If this ends up going to a runoff, and right now he's at 13%, let's just call 13%, 150,000 votes. If he ends up racking up about 300,000 votes, because it's maybe halfway home at this point, what's your sense of how that breaks?
I think that breaks for Paxton. I think if it's not with the incumbent now, it probably breaks away. Sort of what kind of conventional wisdom usually suggests. If he couldn't close the deal with these voters by now, I think he's going to have a real tough time. I mean, it's not 100%. Some of them will go back, but I think it's probably a good break towards the challenger.
What's that spread? If there's, call it 300,000 votes out there, what do you think that spread looks like?
If it goes to the runoff?
If it goes to a runoff, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could be looking at something that's maybe a 60-40, a 70-30. And I think the point's correct that if they haven't come home to Cornyn yet, the likelihood they return to him in a runoff is less likely. Because you have to also remember that to be a Republican voter who not only votes in the primary, but votes in the runoff, you are the hardest of the hardcore. And that means that you are more likely aligned toward a MAGA base, where the party is right now at its base under Donald Trump, than you are with a John Cornyn. If you saw John Cornyn end up losing statistically tonight to Ken Paxton, even though they will go to a runoff, you become more of a disenfranchised voter than I think a motivated voter.
How many of those, and again, I'm just making up the number 300,000 based on he has about 155,000 with somewhere around expected half the votes in, right? How many of those actually come back out?
That's going to be one of the toughest things to tell, right? When it comes to these runoffs, these aren't necessarily things you can model and pull for and find out who is going to be that actual voter that shows up. But that's the name of the game right now. And that's the name of being the political consultants in Texas right now, is you got to be looking at your numbers and going, I got to try to find these voters and remotivate them to come out for my guy when they've already come out once. And so trying to sway a small pocket of persuadable voters that you're not quite sure who they are. I mean, that's a masterclass in political consulting right now.
I think a lot of the people that are supporting Wesley Hunt could be those conservatives that are feeling like maybe they got lost in the fray a little bit. Like they don't want the old traditional conservatism that Cornyn is kind of representing, maybe that stability and that old, whatever the Republican Party was a few years ago.
Old guard, yeah.
Yeah, and not really wanting the antics that come with somebody like a MAGA-based star. like Paxton, because on top of just being part of MAGA, because nothing's wrong with just being part of that faction of the party, but all the scandal and everything that Paxton has going on, that could be a voter that doesn't want that. And we kind of saw that if we zoom out a little bit in the general election when you had President Donald Trump throwing his name back in the hat and, people challenging him that were just like, we really don't want the antics, but we do like some of the policy. And so those people might be trying to figure out where they fall after this. And we saw that a lot of them ended up falling with Trump. So if that was a tale of the signs, and I mean a tale of the times, then I would think that a lot of these voters might just end up going with Paxton.
Yeah, if they're motivated to come out again, and that's the big thing. Are they going to be motivated? If you are a Wesley Hunt voter, are you going to be able to be motivated to come out again?
Hey, Mike Madrid, I mean this sincerely. I really appreciate the time and perspective and insight. It's 10 o'clock on the East Coast, 9 in Texas, and I'm told you got to bounce. So thank you, sir.
Yeah,
I appreciate all the insight.
It was great talking to all of you guys. Great stuff. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks,
have a
Mike.
good evening.
Yeah, have a great evening. Is Jaron with us?
Not yet. He seems to be a little delayed, but we still have Grace with us.
Great. Oh, wow, Grace.
Who can definitely break down plenty of this information for us.
Hi, Grace Panetta, back with us. Grace and Basil.
Yep.
Grace, are you still out there? Hello.
Yes.
Take us across what you're looking at tonight, Basil, as she breaks this down. What are you watching?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, an update on the voting situation in Dallas County. Earlier, it had been reported that the voting was extended for a couple of hours due to issues with voters being turned away from their polling places because the county moved from a central vote center model to a precinct model. And now the Texas Supreme Court has overturned that decision and has said that all the ballots cast after 7 p.m. Central, which are provisional ballots, have to be separated out. So we could be waiting even longer to get results out of Dallas County.
Well, they're having a press conference about it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Colin Allred and Jasmine Crockett. They've already announced that they're having a press conference about Dallas County. So Democrats, early election denial lane here. Look at them take the lead early on it.
Oh, man.
Show me what's going on there on the Democratic side, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Grace?
Yes, absolutely.
Since that's going to be a story, it seems like one way or another in some form or function tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. Well, now getting more results in, we have Talarico leading Jasmine Crockett by about 9 points. While we don't have data in yet from Dallas County itself, we can take a look at some of the surrounding suburbs. We see Crockett still in the lead over here in Tarrant County, leading Talarico by about 12 points. And then if we look over at some of these other suburbs, Denton, Talarico has a big lead, 63% to Crockett's 35%. Let's look at neighboring Collin County. Oh, wait, that's not Collin County. Sorry. We see Talarico doing really well in these suburbs, which are kind of the targets that he wants to hit. More results coming in here in some of these Rio Grande Valley districts that we have been talking about. And we're getting now that it is 9 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Mountain Time. El Paso is going to start coming in. Just about a little over 60% reporting in El Paso. Talarico putting up some of the same numbers that we've been seeing in these heavily predominantly Hispanic parts of the state, which again looks like the targets that he needs to hit. So really the big question mark is, can Crockett run up the score sufficiently in Dallas and in some of the Houston and surrounding suburbs that we've been talking about? As of now, it looks challenging, but we still got a good bit of the vote out yet.
So Dallas County is not in, and as I just do back of the envelope math, Talarico's up by about 117,000 votes. How big is the margin expected to be for Crockett there?
Yeah, so let me pull up. She should do pretty well. I'm pulling up what it was in the 2020 runoff between Royce West and MJ Hagar. Yeah, in that contest, West got about 70% of the vote. Hagar got 30%. I think Crockett would even want to exceed that even more to have a shot yet at closing the gap and being competitive in this race, especially with some of the other numbers we've seen. She would have to put up a really, really strong performance in Dallas County to match Talarico's dominance in kind of the Austin, San Antonio area, and in a lot of these more predominantly rural and Hispanic areas that we have coming in.
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is there's a, what did I just say, about 117,000 difference?
Yeah.
But that's without Dallas County. So
right.
What is it potentially theoretically right now? Like how big is that? Like you're looking at a Talarico plus 10, give or take, but that's without Dallas County. So what do you suspect the margin actually moves to when that comes in?
No, it's a good question. Yeah, it's a tough question. Yeah, I'm like reticent to put an exact number to it. If
you had to guess, I'm not.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, I think if she's able to, it's also it's hard to say because we don't know like what else is going to come in, like how a lot of other things in the state are going to come in. I would say that she would need to, close the gap by at least a few percentage points. I would say, in the, 5 to 7 range. I don't know if that's feasible for her at this point. It is a large bucket of votes, but maybe not large enough to where even if she won it overwhelmingly, she would close this gap. It's a little bit tricky to say, especially, as has been mentioned before, Texas has no party registration. People don't register by party, so it's not like there's a ton of great, modeling on that. We just kind of have the results of past cycles. And I do think the 2020 runoff between MJ Hager and Royce West is helpful by comparison. But there's been just a lot of unknowns in this primary so far, which is what has made it so fun to analyze.
Grace, I just wanted to ask you real quickly, though, I mean, especially with our bureau, we have one of our reporters, Vinay Simlot. He's very in tune with everything that happens in Texas. One of the things that he highlighted was the fact that Jasmine Crockett has quite a following online. She has one of the largest social media presences among lawmakers in Congress. And especially for the past couple of years, she's really spent a lot of time building up a lot of momentum and has had plenty of very fired up exchanges during hearings. The thing is that this showcases that this is an incredibly close race. What do you think feeds into the fact that despite how fiery she is and how much of a presence she has, this is still a lot closer than I feel like a lot of people were expecting just a couple of months ago?
Yeah, I think this really speaks to just how engaged and fired up the Democratic base is right now. We've, seen in a lot of cases turnout, especially early turnout, being a lot higher in Democratic primaries versus Republican primaries. We've seen that be the case here as well. And I think, she has very intentionally built up, she has a lot of name ID for a U.S. House member, just like Talarico has a lot of name ID for a state lawmaker. We have these two really interesting cases of young, millennial, very, very digitally adapted, digitally native young, lawmakers who have really adapted quite well to our current information, social media environment, which is an area that others have struggled to do. It's a big discussion among the Democratic Party. But I really think this speaks to her name ID, her presence in the state, and then also just, I think the support she has among Black voters really cannot be overstated. Obviously, she, looking at the map now, obviously has a bit of a tough uphill climb there, but that is a really crucial demographic that she appears to have locked down. And another reason why it's notable that this race is as close as it is she only has been in the race for a few months. I believe Talarico officially launched in September. She got in a few months later. And Texas is a huge, huge state that's very expensive to campaign in. So that's, really speaks to, just her presence that she's built up and the fact that she's able to be competitive with just a couple months of runway.
I think when we saw Jasmine Crockett go on The View a couple weeks ago and say that she wanted to have apathetic voters get out, because we know Texas is one of those places where we only usually see around 50% of voters in general elections come out and vote. She feels like she can be the person to get people who've skipped past elections, whether we're talking about smaller elections or bigger presidential elections, come out of their seats and vote. And I think she was betting on herself in a big way. And we saw a lot of eyes and attention turned to this race and a lot of immediate criticism. And I think that's propelled her even more past the fame and stardom that you guys were mentioning on social media and beyond that. I think at the same time, it's also propelled Talarico Talarico in certain ways because the Colbert interview did probably more for him than any part of his own campaign money just by them not wanting to air it, and then it ended up doing millions on YouTube. So I think both of them have turned this race into something that a lot of people maybe wouldn't pay too much attention to something that the whole nation is focused on. One of the most probably consequential decisions of tonight. And I think that Jasmine Crockett, like, she's betting on the fact that there are a lot of voters of color, like you said, throughout Texas. She was a civil rights lawyer. She might have that combative communication that frustrates some people, but others think that is the response to somebody like a President Trump. I mean, Newsom's taking that same tactic, and people might not look at him as that combative. They might see it as more entertaining. And so she's just really betting on the idea that fighting fire with fire is the way forward. And we just have to see how the people of Texas respond to that. There's never really been an opportunity in recent history where people were taking a Democratic candidate seriously. But I think the fact that we have President Trump in office and some of the policies are not lining up with the campaign promises provide an opportunity for Democrats to kind of fill in that gap and that void that Jasmine Crockett was trying to solicit to. In this
Also
campaign.
think Jasmine Crockett was a little bit of Democrats' worst nightmare in Texas. They wanted Talarico to not be challenged in this primary. They wanted what appeared to be a moderate to come out of this primary election and into the general, because they still have, like I always say, the big blue fever dream in Texas. So they didn't want to have to spend millions of dollars having Jasmine Crockett drag James Talarico further to the left, because to try and moderate going into a general, that's very hard to do, especially in big, expensive Texas. So for Democrats, yeah, Jasmine Crockett, has done well for herself, but for Democrats in Texas, they did not want this. This is actually the last thing they wanted, was this competitive primary
But I'll
between
tell them
these
that
two.
because maybe more Democrats that are, been in the party forever, that people consider like the old generation, like people who didn't want to support Mom Donnie might be the people screaming that from the rooftop. But as we saw through a different mayoral campaign and election, there were a lot of people that wouldn't support Mom Donnie, failed to support Mom Donnie. And we're already seeing within a few months of him taking office that people are embracing him, including President Trump, in a different way than we've seen, because maybe he's young, maybe his communication style. And so perhaps there is an opportunity or a road to allow somebody who hasn't been in a position like that.
But I was going to echo her point, though. I mean, it is a good point. Whenever you've seen some of the Texas races as they've played out so far, almost every time that they've gone with the tried and true candidate that the
That's
Democrats
why they wanted Talarico, because they thought it's the same recipe.
So then at that point, wouldn't it make more sense for them to then go with Jasmine Crockett, who is different?
Try something new.
You could try something new, but Democrats clearly don't want that in Texas. And it looks like Talarico, especially with where the numbers are going, is more likely to succeed this evening than Jasmine Crockett. And in Texas versus New York City, trying something new with a Jasmine Crockett is very different than a socialist Zoran Mondami in New York City.
Speaking of trying something new, first off, Grace, I hear you got to run. A million thanks for being with us. Or can you hang for a little bit?
No, I'm good. I can hang for a minute, especially since we just got a Dallas County vote dump in. So yes,
cool.
Very
hang with
exciting.
me here for a second. I want to bring in Jerome Zhao, who is head of politics over at CalSHE. First off, did I get your name right? I follow you. I see all your stuff. And if I botched your name, it's my bad.
No, that was right. That's the right pronunciation.
Rock and roll. All right. I'm on your app a ton daily. I may or may not have been searching the Arnold Palmer Invitational this morning. Cannot confirm or deny. Let's talk politics, though. So prediction markets. First off, give me the 30-second for those folks who have been living in a closet and don't know what it is.
Yeah, well, prediction markets, basically we offer markets on real world events where you can trade yes or no on whether certain events will happen in the future. And the prices will fall between 0 cents and $1. And that reflects the probability that traders think an event will occur.
Right.
So, for elections, right, 80 cents would mean 80% that a candidate would win that election. So that's just generally like what prediction markets are. And
so Jerome's with CalSHE. You probably know the name CalSHE. You probably know the name Polymarket. They're the two big players in the space. What are you seeing right now as millions are flowing in on these races tonight? I mean, literally millions of dollars from all over the world. What are you seeing right now? First off, are you able to share your screen with us and sort of poke around?
Jerome, if you can share your screen, I can pop it up
share
for
with
you.
us if you don't mind. And let's pull up some of the markets that you're keeping your eye on right now. Again, these are the prediction markets, essentially the betting markets where people are putting their money where their mouth is. Different from polling, obviously different from voting. What are you seeing? What are you looking at?
Are you able to see this by screen?
Yes, I'm pulling it up right now. Give me 1 second.
Give us a few here if you can't hear us.
No.
And you are good to go. Transition. And there you are, man.
All right, what do we got here?
Awesome. Okay. So this is our new sort of primary hub. We built out a whole new user interface for the primary elections. It's map-based now, and I think it's very cool. You get to click through and see which states have primaries in different months, which it's a little bit difficult to keep track of sometimes. For Texas, which is the biggest state going tonight, I think the markets have moved quite a bit. In the Democratic primary, Talarico is at 99% chance, and our markets have had him favored basically since the beginning. He was, around 70%, 80% in these past couple weeks. And when the votes came in tonight, he jumped to 99%.
Click on that and go broad, Jerome, just so folks can see what's going on here. No, sorry. Click on the Talarico race.
Oh, I see.
And give me like a 6 month if you can, or whatever it is, just so people see. So there you go. So James Talarico and the betting markets essentially broke, what is that, in the recent months?
Yeah, so basically in last December was when Crockett sort of announced her candidacy. And then since then, he sort of jumped out to a lead in the markets. And despite the sort of polling, which sometimes had Crockett up by 18, sometimes had him up, it was very all over the place. The markets have kept him ahead. And tonight, he has jumped out to 99%.
Yeah, and you've got how much? My goodness, what is that? 14 million, something like that.
14 million so far, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the Republican side because there's been some movement there. Ken Paxton, and this is tricky because the question is who will be the nominee. We might not know tonight who the nominee will be if nobody hits over 50%. But maybe pull us out to like a 1 week so folks can see what's going on. Bang, there you go. Well, so the markets move kind of from like low 80s to high 60s for Paxton.
Exactly. I mean, this market was pretty stable for the longest time. The polls usually had Paxton up in the low single digits, and he was around an 80% chance of winning this past week. And tonight, he's fallen to 67%. Cornyn's up to over 35%. And you're right, this is to be the nominee. So it includes the runoff. We have a separate market that asks if this election will be won outright tonight, and that has plummeted to like 1%, indicating that go
to Aaron's quote unquote blue fever dream, which is who ends up winning this thing in November, the blue team or the red team in Texas. I think it's what is it at right now? Like 60s on the Republican side. Oh, look at that! Wow,
it's
57. Okay, so. Aaron calls this a blue fever dream, and the money says what?
Well, I mean, not quite a fever dream anymore.
Betting's different than voting. I want to be honest about that. Betting is different than voting, and
how often is this accurate?
I did separate out polls, votes, and prediction markets. Polls, votes, and money. Again, three very different things
also,
here.
that's a good question.
But
how accurate are the bettors?
Because Robbie, my co-host, bases a lot. He's like, the prediction markets are usually right. And I'm like, are they? Is there a study around this? Are they generally pretty accurate?
We need a case study after this cycle for sure.
Jerome wants your money. You know that, by the way, right?
I know. I don't bet on anything because I think it jinxes it for me.
Fair.
Yeah, I mean, this market has gone from 80% Republican to now, under 60%, which
I think
would be considered
they're going to win. Talarico's going to win.
Awesome. Yes. I mean, Talarico's at 98% chance. This is pricing that into the general election, as well as the uncertainty and the fact that the Republicans are going to a runoff that won't occur for 2.5 more months, which could be bruising. It's not entirely clear what will happen there. But there won't be any unification of the Republican Party until after then.
Right.
And as for your question on whether prediction markets are accurate, well, we have done calibration exercises to sort of assess the accuracy, and our markets are very, very good, especially in elections, because they're great information aggregators. So despite, or beyond polling, they also take into account, early vote numbers, fundraising, candidate quality, like scandals. They're very reactive to that. So, for example, especially in primaries, last June, we had the New York City mayoral primary.
How much was eventually bet on that?
Oh, in the general election, that almost 130 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
We all had the same reaction.
That was a huge market. Yes.
By the way, I know he won't. I mean, maybe he will, but obviously, and then there's more in poly market too. So I mean, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars collectively. Hey, Jerome, take us to North Carolina real quick.
To the general election.
Yeah, because now we've got Roy Cooper, who's the Democratic nominee, the former Democratic governor there in the Tar Heel State, and then Michael Whatley, who will be is the Republican nominee, former chairman of the RNC. And so, what are you seeing there? This would be a flip of a seat there. The markets, how they reacted tonight.
So the markets have not reacted much tonight because, frankly, they already had both priced Michael Whatley and Roy Cooper at 99% chance.
Right.
So that was already priced in. I will say this market, Democrats have been ahead in this market for a long time, and their lead has grown. I think some, forecasters might say this is like a lean D race or even a toss-up. The market's very clear. This is, at the very least, a likely D. Where Democrats are very heavily favored.
Can we go to control of the House? Because at the end of the day, this is really, I don't want to say, it's fair to say it's the big question, right? Like this is the big one. You flip the House, if Democrats get in control, it's whether you like it or not, it'll be investigation city into Trump and the administration and all of it. Nothing gets done legislatively on any sort of level, and that's sort of the last 2 years of the Trump administration.
Let's say
if that
80-20?
You're at a...
It says 80-20.
80-20. And when was the sort of expansion point there?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I was following this market very closely last year. This whole sort of, narrowing during the summer and fall, that came as a result of, a couple, generic ballot polls that showed tied or very, very narrow Democratic leads, but also the whole redistricting push from Republicans starting in Texas. And for a while, it wasn't clear if Democrats would respond, how vigorously they would respond. And, there was thoughts that Republicans could gain 5 up to 10, seats through redistricting. Where this sort of jumped back to Democrats was the elections last November, when Democrats, they're at 58%. And overnight, basically, they jumped to close to around 70%. And that was because of the degree and sort of the breadth of the victories last November in Virginia governor and down the ballot in New Jersey governor, which people thought would be close, ended up being, 14, 15 points. And then in, certain other state races in Georgia and in Prop 50 passing in California. So all of those combined, the national environment was clearly very favorable to Democrats, perhaps more than the polling indicated. And that's where the market's jumped since then. And then, from then on, the redistricting battle has sort of gone more in Democrats' favor. A couple Republican states failed to redistrict, like Indiana. And that's why currently you're looking at an 80-20 market.
Hey, Jerome, hang with us here. And I want to bring Grace Panetta in. If you can go back, Jerome, real quick to the Texas Republican, because Decision Desk HQ is now projecting that Cornyn and Paxton will advance to a runoff in the Texas Republican Senate primary. Again, that would mean that nobody hits the magic number of 50% plus one. Betting markets, you can see when we came up, what was it just 10 minutes ago when we were talking? What did I What was it?
It was like 67% for Paxton.
Yeah, it went
now
from
it's
67 to 61, and Cornyn from like 30 something to 40. Can you go to the 1 day real quick, just so we can see it, or is that where you are?
Yeah.
So there you go. You see,
yes.
yeah, you
One
just see
other
sort of the
important
real
thing-
time. I want to bring in Aaron. Go for it.
Yeah, no, one other thing about this Texas race that we haven't talked about, especially on the Republican side, is how much money Cornyn spent versus Paxton. Cornyn outspent Paxton 33-1. And that is a massive amount of money disparity. So Paxton Clark or Cornyn clawing back into this race and into a runoff is reflective of those dollars. So we're talking $100 million already in this primary. It's going to explode right now.
I mean, they call him Big John for a reason.
That's exactly right.
Grace Panetta, Jerome, stay with us here for a second. Grace Panetta. Where does this night end up? Where does this night end up, given sort of where we are at, call it almost 10:30, 9:30 Central Time?
Yes, almost 10:30, almost 9:30. Yeah, not surprising that Cornyn and Paxton are headed to a runoff, but that means another more than 2 months of aggressive spending, campaigning, lots more to come, as it appears that as we've gotten more votes in on the Democratic primary, we see Jasmine Crockett close the gap a little bit against James Talarico after that vote dump came in from Dallas County, but only by a couple of points. I believe the split was something like she got around 68% of the early vote that came in, and she's just, a good showing, but not quite hitting the targets that she needs in order to really close this gap with James Talarico at this point. So still a lot of results to come in. We're not going to get all of Dallas County in tonight, but I would, probably rather be James Talarico at this point. And then in the North Carolina 4th Democratic House
Grace,
primary.
Can you share your screen with us real quick? Just as we go sort of race by race.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll take Jerome's down for a second, but look at that. In the Texas Republican race, you've got money flying in. Speaking of money, all right now, on the possibility of John Cornyn actually pulling this thing out. Jerome Zhao with Kalshi with us, Grace Panetta, Lindsey Granger, Aaron McGuire, and Basil John. Jeffrey Skelly will be coming in momentarily. But what are you, as we move to North Carolina 4, you've been watching this and explain why, and it looks like that's a close one there.
Yes, this race has gotten incredibly close. We've seen Nita Alam continue to close the gap against the incumbent Democrat Valerie Foushee. Alam is, doing quite well in Durham, in the Durham County portion of the district, as we see over here, leading by a little over 5 points here in Orange. And we have, a lot of the vote, over 90% of the vote in. So this could be the real nail biter. This is one of Foushee's better parts of the district, as is the part that has Chatham County. So super, super close race. Really interesting to watch. It will be quite something if we see that incumbent Valerie Foushee lose tonight, in addition to everything that's going on in the House races over in Texas.
Yeah, let's go to those House races in Texas.
Yes.
And let's start with probably Dan Krenshaw is the most recognizable figure.
Yeah.
What's there? What's going on there? And then let's go over to Al Green.
Yes. All right. Yeah. Now with about 63% of the vote in, we see Steve Toth leading Krenshaw by quite a large margin. It's hard to see how Krenshaw comes back from this here in the Texas 2nd District. And then if we go over to, let's see, where is...
You have to
right.
go.
Do I just hear Jeffrey Skelly?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, Jeffrey, tell me what to do. Tell me where to click.
There are too many featured races in Texas, so I can
do I have
pull
to
up
look
if
it
you
up?
want.
Okay.
Okay, no, it's okay. I got it.
Skelly is with us.
He just crept out
Aaron-
from like the
Aaron McGuire.
dark corner.
And Skelly, by the way, Jerome Zhao is hanging out with us. You don't see him in the
Hey,
box
Jerome.
right now.
That's not
What's
right.
the race you're watching right now? And then I want to just sort of bring Jerome in on where the money is going.
And Jeffrey, if you can pull up your screen for us too, that would be great.
Oh gosh, you know what? It helps to click share. I apologize. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I was talking about we were just mentioning the 18th. We're still sort of in it might be headed to a runoff between Christian Menifee and Al Green. I don't guys talked about it, probably did, but Decision Desk has projected that the Texas Republican Senate race is going to go to a runoff.
Yep.
And so that's sort of the big news. And I noticed you're looking at the Kalshi odds, and I kind of wonder if people are. This is not betting advice, but it seems like people are moving real hard.
Hashtag not financial advice.
yeah, and we still there's a lot of election day vote left.
Right.
So I'm suspicious. I would assume that Paxton is going to end up overtaking him, but it does seem like Cornyn has held up better than maybe we would have expected. And
by the way,
by the way, lurking out there, get Cornyn an endorsement from Trump, and who knows?
By the way, Jerome Zhao, in the betting markets there, John Cornyn is now the money's now flipped to him, and that's sort of the sentiment tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not just perhaps like the raw vote or the vote percentage he gets tonight. I think it's the fact that if he's able to keep it close or finish ahead, that would encourage the Republican, National Senate Committee to spend millions and millions of more dollars on him. And perhaps it could even coax a Trump endorsement, right? Because I think you have a scenario where if, Paxton was at 49% and he was at like 39%, that would be very tough to overcome that. If he's obviously like tied or even ahead, he's favored going into this runoff even before the money and the wild card of the endorsement.
So Skelly, take me into that race if you can just thank you, appreciate it. What are you seeing over at DDHQ?
Well, again, we're looking at an estimated close to 800,000 votes remaining, and that's almost basically all election day vote. And the expectation has been that Paxton will win the election day vote, and perhaps by some margin. So the question is, okay, the votes remaining keeps ticking down. When are we going to actually see Paxton close? I still think he will, but in the sense that and surpass Cornyn. But again, this to speak to Jerome's point there, it is good news for Cornyn if he can just keep this really close. I mean, if you're sitting in a situation where it's Paxton like 44 and Cornyn 42, that would be the kind of result that is essentially a win for Cornyn, and showing people like I'm not dead yet, and I can, you can, people have been writing my political obituary a little too quickly, and in terms of having the incredible resources of the National Republican Senatorial Committee and other outside groups pouring in money for him, they promised that they'd do that, and they continue to do it, and that would give them, I think, the license to feel like it's really worth it to them to continue just pouring in.
Take me now over to the other side of the aisle, because we've been waiting for Dallas County to come in, and Grace Panetta went through some of the numbers with us, but I'm looking at about 70% of the vote total in Dallas County, in Jasmine Crockett up about 43,000 votes there, but even with that, James Talarico still up by 6 in Texas tonight. Where does that race stand with, give or take, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2/3 of the vote total in?
Yeah. So again, the expectation was that Crockett would do better in election day vote compared to the early vote. So in that sense, we're sort of, if you look statewide, you're sort of where I think we anticipated things being, which is Talarico ahead, but Crockett within range, where if she does do particularly well in the election day vote, she might catch Talarico and potentially overtake him. You wonder if maybe she would have wanted a larger margin, even with the early vote in Dallas. It's her home base. It's the kind of place where she'd be hoping to be in the 70s, I think, by the time we get all the votes in. And there she is, at 60? Yeah, around 60. Maybe not as strong as she would have hoped for Dallas County, even with the early vote in consideration. So, I think at this point you view Talarico as the favorite, but it's sort of in that range where, Crockett could come back.
When do you expect to call it? Or when do you think?
Oh God. Well, I will tell you, there's a wrinkle here. I don't know if you guys have discussed it, but we know that the polls were ordered by a judge to stay open in Dallas, but then the state Supreme Court has come in, and it's not my understanding is I haven't seen an update on this yet. Not necessarily a final order, but they have, while they're considering it, they have ordered Dallas County to separate votes cast by people who were not in line at the normal poll closing hour. And so, I mean, this is the kind of thing that keeps people up at night who care about like election results being sort of accepted and being people being like, oh yeah, things were right, things were, we got the result that was sort of legitimate. So because if this thing does get that close and those votes start to matter, that's kind of nightmare fuel, frankly.
Yeah, let me ask you this: on a scale of golf clap to jumping jacks, I'm looking at 1.5 million Democrats voting so far, or at least counted so far, with somewhere in the area of 2/3 of the expected vote total in. That probably puts you somewhere around 2.3 million votes. Is it golf clap? Is it jumping jacks? Where is it for Democrats tonight in Texas?
I mean, I think
I
Democrats
just totally made up that scale, by the way, on the fly. I don't know.
I'm thinking about it.
Awesome.
That's great.
Golf clap, jumping jacks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably something like fist pump. Yeah. Maybe does that work?
No.
Does that work?
Like where are they? Like how excited should they be?
I mean, I think they should be reasonably excited in the sense that they've turned out a lot of Democratic voters. Perhaps some voters who are disaffected Republicans, though at the end of the day, most of the people who voted in this primary are surely Democrats. But they may have turned out some people who don't normally vote in primaries, which suggests a level of engagement that's higher. And that reflects having two candidates that a lot of voters were getting excited about, getting energized about. Democrats haven't had this kind of highly contested and highly engaged primary in a very long time, at least since maybe 2002, but even then, you may have to go back further to find a situation where a statewide primary with this sort of level of attention being placed on it on the Democratic side of the aisle.
All right,
on that turnout piece, I just want to chime in, and I want to say, like, it's so if they hit over 2.3 million, right? That would be, I think, pretty historic. In 2020. During the presidential primary in Texas, this was when, on Super Tuesday, Biden, Bernie Sanders, it was a pretty contested state between them. Democrats got around 2.1 million in that primary. So this would surpass 2020 presidential level Democratic turnout, which is definitely not something to overlook or, dismiss.
Skelly, I know you got a long night ahead of you. I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, especially the way things are trending.
Yeah. Thanks for jumping on.
Court ordered delay for poll closings here and there, and
we only have a handful of minutes here, so I'm going to go around the horn. Jeff, good night, dude. Not good night. Good luck is what I should say.
Good night and good luck.
Good night and good luck.
Yeah.
All right, so here's who we have here. We have Grace Panetta. I'm going to get to you in a second. Basil John, I'm going to get to you in a second. Aaron McGuire, Lindsey Granger as well. Jerome, I'll open it up to you as it's the first night of primaries across the United States of America. 3 states, the 2 that we've been focused on. The one race, it doesn't have to be tonight, anywhere between now and November that you're looking at in the prediction markets, in the betting markets. If you can pop up your screen and share it with me. One race, I know it's hard, given there's quite literally tens of thousands, but it's what? As we sit here on March, whatever it is, at 10:38, March 3rd, 10:38.
Yes, let me pull it up for you.
Yeah.
All right.
I gave you a bunch of possibilities, so I do give you the time to pull it up.
Yes, you did.
The possibilities are endless.
And I just shared my screen. I don't know if that is. Oh, there we go.
There we go. All right. I knew you would give me something random.
Democratic Senate primary. That is a bit of an easy answer, but this is an extremely contested primary, and I think it's remarkable because you have the sitting 2-term governor on one side, and and she is the underdog against Graham Plattner, this progressive, like Oyster Fisher, who has captured this grassroots energy, although he himself has a ton of scandals as well. So it's and there's a case of establishment versus progressive, a younger versus, like a generational change argument. And this is a must-win state for Democrats in the general election to take out Susan Collins if they want to win the Senate.
I wasn't expecting you to pull up Maine of all things, honestly.
That's a good pull. Good pull.
Good pull. A good pull and a good pull. All right. Jerome Zhao with Kalshi, head of politics. It's fascinating. Like I said, I look at this stuff all the time. Appreciate you, sir. We'll do this again soon. Thanks, Jerome.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Have a good night. Basil John, who's been the man behind. Actually, before I get to Basil, Grace Panetta. Sorry, I want to take the people in cyberspace first. Grace Panetta, you have been amazing with us all this evening. Sort of final thought as we go across either Texas or North Carolina or the political landscape tonight, given what we've seen.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for having me on this evening. This is a real barn burner of a start to the 2026 election cycle. There's really something for everyone across the board, which is what's made it really fun. Kind of a lot of interesting, inter-Republican dynamics on the GOP side as we see down ballot candidates kind of position themselves for maybe a world where Trump is still the president, but positioning themselves for a post-Trump world. And then on the Democratic side, you see this kind of different stylistic, strategic visions offered in the Texas Senate race by Jasmine Crockett and James Talarico, and also over in the North Carolina 4th District Democratic primary too. Kind of this ongoing simmering debate within the Democratic Party over the role of pro-Israel groups in the party. And that's, something we're going to see continue to play out throughout this cycle. And also the generational change kind of dynamics you have in some of these down ballot House primaries and that one. And as we were just talking about with Al Green and Christian Menefee. So lots of fascinating stuff to chew on tonight.
Grace Panetta. A million thanks. We appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
We'll do it again. Thanks
Hold on
so
here.
much.
Before you go, I'll give you this much is all I can offer you. Is just a little bit of applause.
There we go.
For all
Thank
the
you.
things that you're able to bring to us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. This is so much fun.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. We'll do it again soon. Thanks, Grace.
Yes.
By the way, hit
Thank
the thing
you.
for yourself, Basil. Hit
Yes.
the thing for yourself. There we go.
Yeah.
Final thought, dude.
Oh God! Final thoughts. Barnstormer is not even. I don't even think it's close to describe how this has been. It's incredibly interesting to see how things have been panning out. And Aaron, you've been able to add a whole lot more color to how the Republican side of this is going to look beyond what I've been able to see, at least from the congressional side, where everyone's running around on Capitol Hill and they're technically not allowed to mention anything about elections while they're on Capitol Hill. And then as soon as they step off, they're like, by the way,
They're
make sure
wild.
everyone votes for us.
Yeah.
And again, big shout out to John Cornyn, Big John.
Yeah. You're gonna send Lindsay off.
Listen, I saw that video when I joined the bureau 6 years ago, and to this day, it lives rent free in my head.
100%.
I just hold it on my phone now since my last name's John, so I'm just like, you know what, he made it for me. But when it comes to this race, I mean, I really, really want to see how things end up turning out. I'm still not sold as to whether Talarico is going to end up pulling this through. I still, something tells me that Crockett's going to end up pulling it out in the end. I may be completely wrong, but if it does, I really want to see how things are going to turn out, because this is a completely different story for Democrats if Crockett ends up taking the round.
It is.
And it just reminds me too much of how New York City's mayor race turned out.
But
I don't know what, again,
you gotta take a
the
big grain of
places are
salt with
different.
that.
She's not letting you make the comparison.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not going to stand with Aaron.
On the Republican side, write me a headline or give me a headline.
Big money coming in Texas, and I mean that huge. The fact that you have seen Paxton maintain this strength with a 33-1 outspend on this, and Cornyn will have big institutional money. The Senate Leadership Fund, the National Republican Senatorial Committee, those are big open fundraising dollars that can go behind John Cornyn that will not go to Ken Paxton. And so that is going to be, I think, a major factor in the runoff.
On the Democratic side, the headline tonight, I know the night's not over, not close, to being over, but the headline is, or a headline
Well,
is.
for me, who likes to make a mountain out of a molehill every time, I think that tonight was the first moment of truth. I think it's going to determine a lot for the future, the ideological direction. I think that doesn't just play on the Democratic side, but on the Republican side as well, and just really be a signal for what people, I mean, if Texas wants that and we balance that with what the rest of the country would like, if they want Jasmine Crockett and she prevails, then perhaps the country wants to move towards an AOC type of candidate in the election. And I don't know if that's true, but I'm just letting you know that's what, if Texas votes for Jasmine Crockett, then that's where the country's going. If they accept the reality.
And I'm not one of those people that says, if this happens, I'll eat my shoe. But like, I'm getting real close, like with Senator Jasmine Crockett. There's a stronger likelihood.
I would have a shoe on a plate for you.
But you know what? I didn't say it. For one, I did say, but also the likelihood that Jasmine Crockett like wins this in the long run is pretty slim.
I thank you both for being here and
for
hanging
running
out
the trains
all
on
night.
this.
Fiery way to end it.
Thank you so much.
Tune in Friday.
Thank you so much for keeping us on the tracks here. That is it. That is all we have tonight. I'm Blake Berman. I thank you for being with us. The first of many to come. I will see you on the Hill, 6 Eastern. Adios.
We did it.